Hello, friends and folks, and we're back. And today I have a very, very special guest. Sorry.
You'll get here later. For now, I'm standing in.
I'll talk about him in a very quick second. But welcome back to the stream. I hope you had a nice week off and that you've had some nice vacation time. We're really excited to be back for our 4th week of Creator Spotlight. And today we're going to be featuring Crying Suns, which I'm very excited about. But before I mention that, I'm Carol Trang. I'm your co-host on Twitch here at Unity. Mike, introduce yourself. You're the OG of this channel, actually.
Yeah, I've been here before. My name's Mike. Hi. Earlier, they're like, what should your title be? I'm like, can it just be Mike? Like, is that allowed? I don't know.
He literally asked, he said, can I be Mike and Mike at Unity?
Just Mikey. That's me, just Mike. No, I've been at Unity a little while now. And yeah, I started with the Twitch stream way back in 2013 and stuff, doing a lot of the live coding stuff. I'm glad to be back. Really missed it. Really missed Twitch and just saying hi to everybody. So howdy, everyone.
Yeah. Mike messaged me. He said he misses being on stream. And I told him if he sent me a lot of candy, I might consider letting him on. So you guys can guess how much candy I'll have on the stream for the next month or so.
Bribery works.
Mike. Yeah, bribery works. No, I'm super happy to have Mike back. You probably known him for a ton of stuff. Like you were the part of the technical marketing team, and you did all the game jams, which were super popular. Which I also had the pleasure of taking over from you, walking in some big shoes, trying to fill some big shoes, walking in some big shadows, filling in some.
Actually, I have surprisingly small feet, so they're not that hard to fill. Yeah, but actually, you know, I will shout out. I mean, all this stuff is outdated now, but I think my favorite part of the Twitch channel was always like the Merry Fragmas, the Christmas-based first-person shooters we used to always do in December.
That's true.
I miss those too. Someday we'll bring it all back.
We should bring that back. There's no VOD of that, but I should go try and find it.
That would be awesome.
we should do a stream where we play some of your old games that you tried to teach people. I would love to.
I just miss being able to do the MS Paint drawings and being like, here, this is what I'm trying to show you. Just go with that. It works.
Those are great. I learned, so for those who don't know, I learned Unity because of Mike. I took our boot camp at Unity and he taught me how to make my first game. So, and he's a very good teacher. So we should bring him on sometime soon when he's not super busy running an entire team to do another game jam or something. That would be awesome.
Sure.
But yeah, like I said, this week we have 3 full streams. Today we're featuring Crying Suns. And tomorrow we'll be featuring The Falconeer. And on Thursday we'll be featuring Greek, Memories of Azure. But let's cut to Crying Suns trailer first. And we're back. Welcome, Alt-Shift team. Why don't you introduce yourself first, Christophe?
Sure. So I'm Christophe. I'm one of the developers at Alt-Shift. I also the one in charge of everything Apple here, so macOS and iOS versions of our games. And I've joined the studio in 2017, so it's my 4th year now, and I'm entering my 5th, I guess. So yes. Wonderful time since I've joined. So.
Thank you for joining us. And Matthias?
Hi, I'm Matthias. I'm the UI UX lead at Alt-Shift. Joined the studio in 2016, and I'm also an associate with at the studio, and I'm also a developer and at Alt-Shift.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you the both of you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I'm really excited about this stream. There's a lot to talk about. But why don't you just give us a real general synopsis of what Crying Suns is? For those who don't know what it is, we'll pop a bunch of links in chat so you can go download it.
Matthias, would you like to go?
Yeah, I can. So Crying Sun is a dark science fiction game, and very inspired by FTL. like we talk about it, and that's the two parts that inspire Crankson. It's that we wanted to have something with dark science fiction and to be based on a strategy game and roguelike like FTL. And it's happen in a darkest future, and you have to travel to different sector of the universe to uncover the mysteries of what happened with the disparition of the artificial intelligence in all the universe and all in the galactic empire you have in. Yeah, that's most for the story, and it's a really heavy story-driven game too, because we had a lot of dialogues and history and story you can discover, and I think that's it basically.
Yeah, I think to describe the game in the shortest form, our tagline is perfect. It is when Foundation meets FTL.
Yeah.
That's everything about Crankson mostly.
It's a lot of Dune references too, right? Like,
Yeah, there are
really feels like...
mostly Foundation, man. But yeah, of course, yeah, Dune, because the main character is Ellis Idaho, so yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's perfect. Probably one of my favorite series. So I was like, ooh, this is like, and anything, when you really love a sci-fi series, I think like, and a lot of like people who play sci-fi games, when you can reference other pieces of literature, other games, it gets really exciting for me anyways. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your team background? I think it's kind of interesting. We've had a lot of invited guests on the stream, but you guys are kind of different. Your background is a little bit different. So tell us a little bit about Altshift.
Our background is mostly around software engineering because we have all mostly had other jobs before video games. Not all of us, but most of us. And we did some business applications or websites or not as entertaining products as video games. But that brought us some discipline, some skills around planning, project management, technical planning also. So devising some architecture around the APIs, etc. So yes, it's a different approach to video games because we want to know where we go beforehand. It's not obviously it's a creative process, so it's not always the case. But we try to plan as much as possible, and yes, and it's a good fit because we are all in the same mold mostly, and it's very easy to communicate with the same basis, and we are all about the same age, even if I'm the older, and I'm reminded of that a lot. But
that's not true.
You don't have to take that. That's ageist. You don't have to do that. You can stand up for yourself.
All jokes aside, we speak very well about that, and a lot of reflection about our process, but not in our creative process, but even our technical process, and how we can be on par with the current technology and not just stay on our old habits. So yeah, it's important to keep that, and yes, I think it informs how we can approach game dev, because we have a lot of how can I say a lot of subjects that are generally challenging for game dev teams, that are the technical aspects or the architecture aspects of underlying systems is not a problem for us. It's even where we are striving most of the time. So yeah, we can concentrate on the gameplay, on the visual aspects of our games, and just I hope make better games. But maybe you would add something, Matthias, about that?
Yeah, I just want to say neither Christopher or I were at the beginning of the creation of the studio, but Frederic, Vincent, and Julian, who are the founder of the studio, know each other from the university. And at the moment they created the studio, they were, I think, all working in different stuff. Vincent has worked a little bit at Ubisoft, but Frederic was working, I think, in marketing in wine, and Julian was doing a PhD at the moment. So to be clear, when we were younger, there wasn't any study specifically for video games, but I think everybody was interested by that. But we all study engineering and computer science at some part, and I think we were playing a lot of game. Everybody was playing on the part and trying to create some video games sometimes, and but that's why we all had such strong background on engineering and computer, because at the beginning of the studio it was difficult for them to create only video games, so they started to work on a web application to earn money. So we had a lot of this history in our process today. So even when we are developing video games now.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting. I think we were all talking about this in the rehearsal like a couple of weeks ago, where none of us, even, you know, the hosts here, me and like Mike, we didn't come from, there were no, like you said, study, like video game study at school. You did computer science, and and I could not explain to my parents in a million years that like, oh yeah, I play video games for a living. I make video games. They would never have said yes to that. They would have wanted me to go make money.
I think there was also, it would make me very old by saying that, but that's not the problem. When I started programming, I was 10, so it was in 1990, and of course there was no internet, there was no online documentation, and you have to find your own solutions. Yeah. And that's something that today you have Stack Overflow, you have Unity Answers, you have Google mostly, and it's good to see many people making a lot of games. It's really great, but many times you get a solution, but you don't get the process to reach that solution. And that's, I guess, what you have to learn, and to learn fast, because the industry is so large now. There's so much competition. And we try to be pragmatic with our games and to be able to make them run on the broadest range of devices or computers in order to reach the most players possible without little. We are 8 in the company, because since our initial rehearsal, we have another employee in the company. But at 8 you can't do GTA. It's not possible. So you have to be
not with that attitude.
Yeah. But even doing Crying Suns is a challenge at 8, because at some point we were 14. So yeah, it's not a simple process. So we have to, I think, to rely on our skills but on our hard learned skills to be efficient. I mean, the most efficient as we can. And that's why I said that the underlying system, which is generally not the most interesting part for game developers, but we are very careful to that, to avoid a lot of to lose a lot of energy that is not very related to the final product.
But at a counterpoint, I want to say that it's also maybe sometimes a weakness, because as we learn by ourselves a lot of stuff, and we had to search for some stuff. I remember when I was younger and trying to understand how programming was working, you have to find your own solution to do some stuff. And today you have a lot of tool and other stuff, and sometimes we think in the first in the first moment and how we will build something, instead of looking if there is maybe something already built by someone else and who's doing what we're trying to put that in our process now. But we had often that problem, I think, to want to create everything and to do it by ourselves instead of watching what could be done
you're totally
by other
right.
people.
And we change our process about that. And I have to say that the package manager helped with that in Unity, because I am very careful to the point that I don't want to have any plugin without access to source code. It's very important, because if at some point the maintainer decide to stop maintaining the plugin, you're stuck. It can be a paid plugin, of course. It's not. We can pay. We have paid for many plugins in the past, but no source code, no plugin. And that's very important, because Matthias is right. Now we try to look for external solutions to not reinvent the wheel at some point. It's not very practical. And but yeah, we have to be independent. We have to keep control on our productions. And when you bury multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars in a game, you have to be sure that this money is not lost at some point. So yeah.
I'm glad you guys didn't decide to make your own engine at the very least. So.
I was going to ask the same thing.
Yeah. It's the studio. One of the first games of the studio was made with a custom engine. That the guys decided to never do that again.
Right? I think everyone who gets into games is at some point like, I'm just going to make my own. I mean, I went that route at one point in my life. It was just like, this is hard. I'm not going to do this anymore.
Yeah. I think you're the third guest that said we started off making our own engine, and then we realized that was stupid. we never went that route again.
To be honest, I understand the strategy, because you want to keep control, you want to be independent, you have to. But there's so many, especially on PC and mobile now. Oh no, I will nuance that. On PC and on Android, you have such an amount of devices to support that you can't test every one of them, and it's the power of teams like yours, of course, because. We pay the software, but you pay upfront for the compatibility. So it is important for us that to be able to run the game on without worrying too much about compatibility, because of course there are always some guys that has a mining tool in the background that make the game crash, but it's anecdotal most of the time. So
yeah, and actually we'll touch on that exactly. All you just talked about. So we'll deep dive on that in case you guys are interested in chat. But before we go to that, so why don't you talk about the inception of Crying Suns? Like, you had another game, for those who don't know, it's called Not, a great mobile kind of like brain teaser game that was really successful. So how did you go from web dev, Not, and then to Crying Suns?
It's not exactly that order, but I think Matthias can
okay.
When I arrived in Altshift, I arrived with the idea of Not, but the other guys were already planning on doing Crying Sun. They done a lot of stuff and on the project, but they were working on the side on this project because they had to do a lot of web application for different company to keep the money flowing. They succeeded in getting a CNC subvention. I don't know, it's the National Cinematographic Center in France that help video games and movies to finance their game on with a different selection. And once they get that, and when I arrived, we continue to work on an application, and we started to work on Not, and we were working also on the prototype of Crying Sun. And I think it's about the same at the same time that Christophe joined the team, work on the prototype of Crying Sun.
I joined for a few months in 2016 to help with pre-production and prototyping of Crying Suns.
Exactly.
It was a very different product at the time, for sure. And yes, it's that for I guess for the 4 months I was there, I was almost alone, maybe with Vincent on the prototypes. And Vincent was our developer, but also lead game designer on Crying Suns. And we made the necessary steps to validate some concepts in Crying Suns during the pre-production. But after 4 months, I had to pursue other ventures, so I left. And in the meantime, you released Not Not, and after that, I guess we restarted really production of Crying Suns in May or June 2017 when I joined, mostly. And at that time, most of the team was full time on the project, I guess.
Yeah, because the success of Not Not, for us, it was a really huge success at the moment, even if it can appear not that huge for other mobile game studio. But for us, it was the moment we could start thinking about maybe we could work on video games only. We couldn't exactly at the time. We had to still do some web application and some contract for the company to earn some money, but we could more serenely think about how we could finish Crying Sun and go further, and maybe at some point, like today, do almost only video games for living.
And you say Not Not is a small success compared to some others, but at some point, I don't know the exact number right now, but we crossed 15 million downloads, so it's not it's not a small success anyway.
Yeah,
no,
it's quite a successful game. Congrats, by the way.
Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. But I just wanted to give a little bit of a more of a deep dive into your backgrounds, because actually a huge chunk of our community have a similar background to you. They didn't come out of game dev, although game dev is like a lovely dream. Like all of us want to work in games. But the reality is a lot of the people I've noticed in our community when I was managing it was they're still working in software. They're working at other companies. They're doing the same jobs as you are. Game dev is still like a thing that they do at night because they really love it. But it's nice to see that it's like, sometimes you have to make the money before you can actually make the nice games.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Cool. One question, actually, before we move on to the next section, you'd mentioned having a lot of this more traditional software, development background and some of these strengths, especially around like planning and stuff. Would you say that you guys, have utilized those strengths to avoid, extreme levels of crunch, which tends to be like systemic in the games industry? How's that work for you guys?
It's a tricky question, because now you'll understand why, because I will speak very specifically for our studio. We are at the end of Crying Suns, we were 6, because at some point we were 14, but at the end we were mostly 6-8 people maybe, but the 2 others were external contractors. And what happened is that the policy in the studio is no crunch for employees. So we are 2 employees in the studio and 4 associates in the workforce, and we have been so much covered. Me and our pixel artist Louis Julien, we have been so covered by this internal policy that I didn't see any crunch on my side, almost any crunch. It was obviously only voluntary. We are not many Polish studios. But many of the associates did some crunch at some extent. Matthias could extend on that, but
I'm sure.
Yeah. But the policy now is that for future production, we will avoid that. Crying Suns is a tricky situation, because most of the pre-production has been cut because we didn't have enough funding to continue the pre-production. So we had to start the production at some point, but of course some things had to be decided later. So we fell into some, but it's not necessarily a technical planning issue. It's a funding issue.
Yeah, at some point it's sometimes really difficult because we had a small team, and sometimes you have some deadlines you can't push forward in time because you don't have the money to do it. So we had sometimes we were forced to work a little bit too much, I say, but because the future of the studio was depending on it at some point. But we learned a lot from that, and we really don't want to reproduce it in any way. So we know that we have enough money to go to look forward what will come. We are trying to make things better and to take more time, and we decided that we don't want to be directed by deadlines. At some point we had no choice for certain reasons. For example, for the mobile version of Crying Sun, we had to get out before a certain deadline because we want to release the game in China, and in China the rules have changed about ESBN or something like that for the validation of the application. So we had a deadline, we couldn't move, and so to finish what we wanted, we had to work a little bit more than we expected to. But I think it's avoidable, not because of the planning, but you have to make this choice early when you start to develop, to take your time if you can. But it's not always easy to do it. Sometimes you have to find the resources to finish or to cut. We cut a lot of stuff in Craigson, for example. We haven't done all the stuff we wanted to do because we had no time and we hadn't the money to go to the end of it. So
yeah, at this point, crunch, notably in France, crunch is a luxury position. Avoiding crunch is a luxury position. I mean, don't get mistaken. Yeah, because of course now we have the funding to take time to do our productions, but we have also built a lot of tools with Crying Sun that will be reused in future productions. So that's some time that is paid already and won't be paid again. But of course, if your game is not successful and you are still struggling with funding, deadlines would be a problem anytime. Yeah, so it's a luxury position for that, to be able to avoid crunch. But as Matt has said, I think on an ethical standpoint, you have to decide when you build this company, do you want to crunch or not? And if you don't want to crunch, you have 7 hours a day, 5 days a week, and that's it. Yeah, for each person in the company. And so you have to plan for that. And of course, you have to have a producer that check your velocity in production. And that's not something that has to be monitored carefully to be sure that it's not monitoring people directly, but checking that what has to be done is done. That's it. Because if you have some lazy people in the team that let the deadline slip, of course, you'll have to crunch in the end. It's obvious. Yeah. So
Good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
Sorry, no, I was thinking that we will really avoid it when it's possible, and I think it's really a problem in the game industry that some of the studio already know that there will be forced to crunch at some point, but we were not. I could say that the background in engineering and planning we had mitigate that, and we I don't that much crush compared to other stuff we can see, and the other part is that there is a lot of unpredictability when you are developing video games, because sometimes there is things that doesn't work and you don't know if you will be able to fix it in a week or in a day. And sometimes you have planned to develop a certain feature in I don't know, a week, 2 weeks, something like that, and it will take the twice of the time. So it's not as easy sometimes to predict the time the stuff will take to create, as you can have in a software development. If you, and on the another part, we were very new and young to a lot of stuff we wanted to create in Gregson, because it was our first big game. So I think we made a lot of mistakes. We will not make for the future game.
Awesome. Well, speaking of crunch, let's talk about dark dystopian futures. And so I wanted to talk a bit about like the aesthetic choices, the look and feel of the game. I mentioned earlier, you know, the first time I looked at the trailer for this on Steam, you know, a lot of games are like talking about the dark future. And you guys are like, nah, let's talk about the darkest future, the darkest timeline here. Like, tell me a little bit about like why a dark sci-fi, like why this aesthetic, what was the inspiration and stuff?
And you will be surprised, but I have exactly the same question.
Excellent.
I think it's I don't want to speak for Frederick and Julian. Frederick was the director, artistic director on Grindson, so he's responsible for a lot of the look and feel of the game, and Julian was responsible for the story, a big part of the story and the universe. And I know that Julian is really fond of science fiction and dark science fiction and Foundation, Dune, that kind of references. And the idea was to have something on some part that was plausible in the future, because the origin of the game is that the artificial intelligence starting to getting better, and it's something that a lot of science fiction novel or movie are talking about, how it will evolve at some point when you arrive at something where a computer or robots are nearly as efficient and intelligent as human on an interaction part. And I think there is a background of we like the no up story and future, that we may be a little bit pessimistic about the future of humanity sometimes. I think there is a little bit of that in Craigs, and that's what's
a little bit.
What could go worse, and what can be a dark future for humanity if we continue.
Excellent.
What's interesting is that this darker future or darkest future that you can have is very divisive when you come to the end of the game. So many people like the end of the game and many people dislike the end of the game. And there is no in between. So it's very divisive. And yeah, it's for the most part, the game has a lot of visual appealing. We had done a lot of work on the light, on the lighting of elements, on the light itself. light representation itself in the game, but indeed it is in a world in decay. So you have to represent that at some point, and in our case, it is in the lore, in the story, and I think the amount of texts that has been produced for the game, it's about it's between 150 and 200,000 words. So it's a lot of text, and yeah, it's been, I think, Julian with Ian Riley, which is the co-author of the game. They did a wonderful job of that, and even if we are French, as a French studio, we did the whole game in English. So yeah, it gave it a certain touch, not a French touch, but mostly no. But that's true.
Yeah,
I mean, we all know English is the darkest language.
And no, most of those series that have inspired Crying Sense were done in English in the first place. So it has that heritage in it. It was really important because we could have done it in French. It was not an issue, but it was pragmatic for translation, of course. But it was also some kind of an heritage from the source material.
Yeah. Yeah, you want to use that reference, the same vernacular that everyone understands.
That's it.
You come in and you're comfortable already in the world.
That's it.
Yeah. And I think the idea about that, it's we were a fan of that kind of science fiction novel, and we were a fan of FTL, and we were thinking, okay, so if we are fan of the boss, maybe there's people who are fan of the boss too. So creating something that can mix the two could be really great, we think, for us. And we opt that we were not the only 4 or 5 people thinking that. And when we made the Kickstarter, for Crying Sun, we started to see that, yes, there were people enjoying the idea of that kind of inspiration and that kind of gameplay.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah, and it feels very consistent, a very strong direction in terms of aesthetics, where a lot of the choices, even in the storyline and gameplay, seem to match sort of that look and feel that you're going for. So I just thought that was pretty cool. And as I'm playing through the game, I can't wait to see if I love it or hate it when I get to the end. We'll see. I will say, I mean, I'm about maybe 30% in. Not one son has been crying yet, so I'm already pretty iffy on that. But so, and then as we're talking about like the look and feel, it sounds like there was a really strong idea even from the beginning with this. Like with a game like this, it feels like it kind of hinges a lot on the UI. The UI is like a lot of like battleship or naval, because you're the commander, you just give orders and you see it on screen. So a lot of it's user interface. Like, how important, was UI in the game process to you guys?
Actually, it was really central to the development, because when you want to create a strategy game, you know that you will have a lot of user interface in your game, and as I was responsible for it, I had to mix and interact with Vincent, who was the game designer, and Frederic, who was the art director, and to find something that will match the both. So I had to find a way to respond to interaction problem, and find something that could be easy enough to play with the game, and at the same moment that could reflect the art direction and integrate well with the idea of the design of the battleships, of the planet and the space behind that. So I could say that when you, for every strategy games, you have a lot of UI. It's really UI heavy, and we were not as a it's not, we are not in the same category as something like Endless Space, for example, or 4X game that are really, really heavy in UI, and where the UI is I don't know how to say that, but is not integrated in the game. You have your God mode vision of the world, and the UI is really an interface separated from the world. We had a little bit less of complexity, I think, in the game and in the strategy. So we wanted to integrate the interface in the world of the game. So what the player is seeing is what the character in the game are seeing on their screen. So I can show you, for example, because it was not always the time when we prototype the game and we work on it, and I will try to show you a little bit of the evolution of the interface.
When Mathias is preparing the fights, we have on the other hand, we have another issue, because we are not in the fight part mostly. We are not as simplistic or as simple, because simplistic is really not the right word. We're not as simple as a StarCraft 2 game, for example, because as a rogue-lite game, we have a lot of different specialized units. It's mostly the same 4 type of squadrons: drones, fighters, cruisers, and special drones, fighter, frigates, and cruisers. Sorry, but all of them can be specialized with specific abilities. So we have the same models for them, but they are different in behavior. And so we had to have an interface for that. We have to have different icons. We have to have different movements sometimes, different controls, etc. So it's a sort of kind of middle ground between yes, a 4X game that is very complex, but some kind of RTS like StarCraft, which is simpler. We have to balance all that all the time. It was tricky.
Yeah. So what I will show you, I think few people have seen it. Maybe the 10 or 15 people who have play tasted the game at the early beginning, and that's a picture I will illustrate with the fight, because it's probably the part that is the more central in the game, and that has evolved the more. So that was the first prototype, and that was the prototype on which Christophe has worked the first time he worked with us. So it was I don't know if it was really a top-down view or something like that, but we had a flying coffin, I would say. That the idea was just to put the different elements of the interface in the game to make it possible to play and to test if the fight were good or not. And I think it's a good step when designing video games to have something really simple with simple shapes, so you can concentrate only on the gameplay. Sometimes it could be problematic if your animation or your visual are really linked to the gameplay, because some effects are missing and some stuff are more difficult to understand at some point. But it's good to have a first version of what you want to test. So I show you, that was, I think, the first playable version when we started to add sprites on the ships, and at the first beginning, that was the first representation of the interface. So it was really simple and not really clear at the moment. But we had this top view that for the ships, and the battleships were were just sprites at the moment, and lateral sprites, and we were not really satisfied with that because it was not really clear, and I think it was kind of abstract at some point. We were more like some chess game than something you're
a
in
lot
the
of
battle.
strategy games do that. It distracts you from the decision. Almost an Ender's game, like I'm just looking at a computer interface and whatever.
Yeah,
exactly. I get what you're going for. Yeah,
and so it's almost the same, but we started to progress on the battleship part. But at some point, we had just a top-down view, and the big battleship were just sprites. And after that, we started to think about seeing the battleships in 3D and to have a more 3D view, even if we use the sprite for the little ships. And the interface started to take form, and to have a look and feel more close to the main artistic direction, and then trying to conceal the gameplay and the visual we wanted to. So it's the first version. I think the version we released on Kickstarter was close to that, and we have some vestige of old gameplay action point we had. We call it a focus point. That's completely disappeared after that, because we realized that we was not a good idea, and it was really difficult to make it work with the rest of the gameplay. And that's what it looks today. So we definitely adapt a more 3D view to make it more in the space of the fight, and the HUD is more simple, but I think more efficient and more clear for the user.
Yeah. So with the squadrons themselves, like the drones and stuff, are those individual sprites or are those particles?
There are individual sprites, the drones, but only one sprite for each drone. And for the other ship, we use the technique with a stack of sprites that can simulate a 3D impression when the sprites are rotating.
Cool. And I know we'll talk a little bit more about that later. I was just kind of curious, like, where particles might have been utilized and stuff like that. But no, it's really cool. And for the folks listening, I got to tell you, Magneto frigates, Impaler cruisers, Boomer drones, that's all you need. You're good. You got this. You got this. So just remember those, at least personally. Can you add a button to the UI that just allows you to attack anyone? Because nothing makes me sadder than when you like meet someone and you're like, I'm going to fight these guys. And they're just like, oh, we just want peace. And you're just like, where's my option? Just be like, no, like you came to the wrong hood. Like just, I tend to play these games to steal a phrase from the Dungeons and Dragons fandom as a murder hobo. I just much prefer to just fight and kill literally everybody.
Man. We can never play together. I'm such a I always just want to take the diplomatic route.
Well, that's why we would play very well together, right? Because when your plan ultimately fails, because it will, I'll be there to stab them. So yeah. Anyway, I like the combat. It's a lot of fun. Very cool. So and it was, it's cool to see the iterative process. I know we talk a lot. We talk about games, but it's iterative and things are never what they end up being and stuff like that. And even in retrospective, like looking through those slides, you can see this iterative process. But a lot of times it's hard when you're in it, when you're making the game, and you're like, is it time to iterate? Is this working? Is it not? Obviously, looking back on it, it becomes clear how one thing led to the other. But I think when people are stuck in it, it's just so hard. Like, any advice to people listening and just maybe they're not really sure if it's clicking, or maybe it's not and they don't know how to find, they know this isn't working, but but I don't know how to make something that is.
I don't know. I think the process we had for the UI, and especially I can show you another example of what we have done on Crying Sun. If I find my it's that we okay, sorry. Okay, we have done a lot of iteration, and a lot of stuff have been designed on a software like Illustrator that's called Sketch. So every time we were proposing a new interface, or we were developing some part of the game, we were testing it, and we were testing it with people outside of Altshift, people we asked to come and play. We observed them. We record them on camera if they were okay, and we had some form at the end to ask what they like, what they understand of the interface, if it was clear or not. And after that, we retake the interface, and as you can see, there is a lot of different screens that have been produced that are static, and that were shared with the team to see what they understand of the interface, even if there is no animation or other stuff added to that. So we weren't doing that at the beginning, and I think the process was more complicated. But at some point, we started to do that, and every interface in the game were produced on screen, and I was asking everybody, what do you understand about that stuff? What does it mean for you? And trying to iterate over this process to find the good level of information and positioning of different elements, to be sure that it will be clear for everybody. And at the moment where the game started to be in beta, because after the Kickstarter, we had a lot of feedbacks of player. And I think it's the best resource you can have for the interface and for the interaction, because people will tell you if they don't understand and if they can't play your game. So you have to be really listening to feedbacks of player on that part, because at the end, that's the player who will play your game.
That's the whole point.
That's the whole point. So even if you think your idea is good, so that a lot of time I had some idea I wanted to put, but I had feedback. It was not clear enough, so that kind of stuff. So at some point you have to say, okay, so I will not do that, because even if I like the idea, everybody is finding this idea not good enough. So
it's hard to be humble enough to be willing to accept that. Some folks in chat made a joke about pro tip, but there's your pro tip, right? When you're stuck and you can't figure out what the right thing to do is, ask someone who is not at all involved in the project. Everyone gets this group think echo chamber where you're all thinking about the same way, and then you take it to your parents, be like, hey, play this, or take it to just a random person down the street or on the online. People have no idea what this is.
I think it's a really good thing. I used to show the game to my parents, for example, that I've never played a video game in their entire life, but they have really interesting feedback about what they understand about the interface and about what the information you're trying to show them. So I think it's really a really good stuff to do to show to people that don't play the type of game you're creating, and also to show to for a player that play that type of game that will have another different view on your game, but the boss are really interesting, important. And I think it's really important to, as you say, to go around, to go see around the studio and outside of it to meet other people that can have some really interesting advice about it.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, actually, both of you, because we actually see this really all the time. Like whenever I go to a GDC or something, we always talk about the games that we made for other game devs, and it really does feel like a game that within the game dev community, it's become like a darling, but then it sometimes doesn't have like mass appeal or success because of all those little elements that are so well hidden in the game. So yeah, I think those are really important things to bring up. Thanks.
Games for game devs.
Yeah.
So as we're talking about, the UI, and we'll continue on with the look and feel in a little bit, but as we're talking about the UI, one of the, I would say, more challenging things in my experience is getting the UI to work right on all these different platforms. And we know you guys launched on several, or are on several different platforms. I wanted to talk a bit about sort of multi-platform approach. And, actually first and foremost, like which platforms is this game available on?
So, do you hear me? I had to change.
Yeah. You came back just in time. It was like really perfect. Like you knew what was happening.
I had to change browser. My Firefox were at 25 gigabytes of memory, so it was crashing my computer.
That'll happen.
Yeah.
I'll teach you.
So the game is available on desktop, on Windows and Mac, and on desktop we are available through Steam, GOG, and the Epic Game Store, and we are available through the iOS App Store, Google Play Store, and the latest release would be on Switch in May, if I'm not mistaken. Since May this year. So the game is available on 6 different platforms and 9 or 10 stores, because we have different variations of the same build. But that's it.
Nice. Oh, and what was it like trying to get like UI, optimizations, just all these different, I know you guys created a few different custom tools and stuff, but just to build for all these different platforms. I know it can be a bit of a challenge. Yeah,
it's a bit of a challenge, but we have been helped by mostly by Unity Cloud Build, to be honest, because the CI system, the CI system included in the tool is very versatile, and of course we could not generate the builds for the Switch on Unity Cloud Build because consoles are not supported at the moment. But it was, we have 20 builds to deploy in each version, so it's a lot, because we have a demo on the PC and Switch, so we have at least 2, 3. We have 5 or 6 builds just for the demo, so it's very heavy to support that, and for the optimization part, we did a lot of the process of optimization has been done when we did the mobile port, and it has been, of course, very useful for the Switch port, which is basically a mobile platform. So there has been almost no optimization for the Switch, specifically for the Switch. We did a lot of UI transformation for the gamepad, of course, but there are no specific optimization I can remember of. Mostly, maybe with disk access. We had because Nintendo is very careful as the frequency to which you write on the storage of the Switch. But besides that, I guess it is,
maybe on the sound we had some
on the sound part.
Sound.
Indeed. The sound had been a little tricky on Switch because the codecs for the audio are different on Switch, so we had to re-encode the sound banks from. We use Wise as a middleware for sound, and we had to do a lot of. It's not necessarily optimization, but bug fixing, because we had some stuttering in the sound, and even a bug with about after about 30 minutes of play, the sound just stopped, and you have to change from a planet to another one, and the sound may eventually come back at some point, but it was not very great. We did not see that before the release of the Switch, so we had to make a patch, an emergency patch, just after that. But by chance, Frederick, who handled the marketing at the company, did manage to have the streamers to hold off on their review and other streams. So it was it had been some damage control on that, but it was okay mostly. But that's a problem when you do multi-platform. You can take one thing granted for another on another platform. So it's a problem, and that's where the editor, the Unity editor, can't help you, because what's specific to a platform cannot be replicated on the PC or the Windows or Mac mostly, but you have to test on the device in the end, and it's valuable. It's true for performance, for visual glitches, for mostly anything, and the sound on Switch, obviously, because in the editor, of course, we did no problem with the sound. It was all perfect. So we had to. You have to test early. That's one of my key learnings in the past few years. You have to test early, because, and we were talking about game jams earlier, sorry. And one of the things I do in all game jams I'm involved in is, in the first hour, I set up a build. If my build pipeline is not going well, you can be sure that in the last hour, when you have to submit your game, you will have some serious issues. So in the first hour, I set up mostly WebGL in the first place, but WebGL and Windows. And if all goes, I know that the game jam will be very peaceful mostly. So put under the rug everything that's annoying in the end.
Awesome. That's a great tip, actually. I'll tell that to all my future game jams that
that's something that is mostly underrated or not considered in the first place, but it is very, very bad.
The Sunday scramble is real. Global game jam. Everyone's like, all of a sudden, no, what do I do now? Yeah. Awesome. And you guys, I mean, you did most of the porting effort like in-house, right? You guys didn't use external.
So as Matthias has explained during the UI part, it is its specialty. So we have an expert in-house. So why bring that expertise or reach that expertise in another studio when you have this in-house? And we, as I said earlier in one of our rehearsals, we are control freaks. So we wanted to be sure that the game...
It's maybe more that.
We wanted to be sure that the game would be as expected in the end. And we also have a work process that is very... I don't know if it's specific to us, I don't think so, but in video game industry, it's pretty rare to work like this, but we do features, bug fixes, features, etc. And we do systematic or almost systematic code reviews. So every time something is done by any developer, level designer, game designer, whatever, we do a code review or pull requests in the Git space, but we do systematically, consistently a code review. But you can't do that efficiently with an outsourcing studio. It's not possible. So what we wanted to have is a single history in our code repository. We wanted to be able to backtrack at any moment and know that everything we had at some point, everything before some point was there for all platforms. Optimizations, tweaks in the UI, tools, etc., etc. So we had to be sure that most of the heavy lifting work would be done the way we wanted it to be done. So we did most of the work in-house. It costs a lot, to be honest, but I don't know if with the budget that we granted the outsourcing studio for the port, which was less, I don't think they would be able to. They would have been able to reach that kind of quality we wanted to have. So it's difficult. Yeah, Matthias.
And I want to underline another point is that when you are giving the product to another studio to make the port for console or mobile, you have to in some way froze what you're doing because they will adapt it to make it work for the other platform, and we wanted to be able to make the modification easily for all platform at the same time. So we could have one branch on our game repository, and when we upgrade one of the platform, every platform will benefit from it, and we will not have the problem of doing another step of developing with another studio. So in the end, it's kind of a big advantage today now that all the platform are programmed, because we program for every platform at the same time.
Yeah. So, but as we said earlier, we are now 8 people. At some point after the release of the game, we were only 6, and only 4 able to actively work on the game. So it's not a lot of people to handle 6 platforms, 9 stores. Yeah, it's a tricky part. So we had to devise during the production of the games tools that help us, because Matthias and I work on Mac, but the rest of the team work on Windows. So I can build and Matthias can build for iOS, but the others can't. What can we do to help them test the game inside the editor, just like if they were on an iPad or an iPhone or any Android device? Because I have to admit, I have some kind of a rant about the mobile pipeline with Unity. It's a time to device. Clearly, it's an issue. The time to device on iOS and Android, but mostly on iOS, is huge. Crying sense, from the moment I click build to the moment I can play the game, it is 20 minutes. But 20 minutes, when you change a comma in a code, it's way too much. So we had to make sure that, of course, for things like iCloud or Game Center or specific to the device, to the platform that you're running on, you have to build to the device. But so yeah, including iCloud in the game has been a really, really, really a nightmare moment for me, and for Matthias because he had to do the code reviews for me. So yeah, it was a tricky moment. But yeah, when you have 10 to 20 minutes as time to device, you can't work like that. So we had to be able to test as many things as possible in the editor directly. And that's why we invested so heavily in our multi-platform tools, because yeah, it would have cost us 10 times what we invested in the first place. So it was not profitable in the end.
That's good to know. Clip that. We'll send that to the team later. It's officially out there, so they have to change it.
Thank you for sharing. It is something we're aware of for sure. And
I'm sure you are aware of that. But,
and looking into.
Yeah, it's as an Apple user, I work frequently on native apps as a hobbyist for the fun, and play in Xcode on a native app is like 10 seconds. It's not the same kind of iteration process. Of course, the Unity editor is a very powerful tool, and you have to rely on it. But it's tricky to, how can I say it? When you have to test Android, iOS, Windows, Mac, potentially the Switch, and you have 2 solutions. You have one clone of your repository on your machine, and you go to build settings and you switch platform. But you can take 40 minutes of re-import each time you do that. Or you can have many clones of the same project on your machines, but you get, for crying sense, you get 20 gigabytes each time on the hard drive. So it's also, and I don't know how many thousand files on the drive. So it's a huge part. So to test on the device, mostly Matthias and I, we have several copies of the repository, because building the project has to be tied to the platform directly. So we have different copies, but in the day-to-day testing, when you are building the UI or tweaking some things that can be tested in the editor, we can test all platforms in a single instance of the editor. And that's a tool. I wasn't sure we would be able to do that in the first place, because I doubted it was possible. But in the end, it is mostly 10 or 20,000 lines of code, but it's a tool that can be ported to other projects. Maybe we will open source it at some point. It is just too dirty at the time, but maybe we will share it at some point. It's one of our goals to share what we can. Everything is not shareable, but most of it is. So it's they are very powerful tools, and I can show you anytime.
Nice. Oh yeah, and certainly it's an investment, right? You put the time into it now, and it pays off in this project, but then in every project that comes up, and that's the power of tools for sure.
But we had in the project, we had very early on the goal to port the game to the iPad. The Switch port was not considered in the first place, because when we started building the game, I'm not even sure the Switch was released.
Yeah, but the mobile on smartphone, it was not an option too.
Yeah,
we were just thinking about iPad only.
And iPad, not Android tablets, iPad specifically. Because to be honest, the premium market on Android is a nightmare. we have the privilege to have been successful on Android, but I will give you a stat. So we have a market share which is 60% iOS, 40% Android on the mobile version, and I think 45% of the iOS part is iPad. But I can tell if someone has the game on the iPad and the iPhone, because everything is merged. So it's difficult to identify that. But I know that 45% of the installation came from the iPad. But on the Android side, we have 95% of the installation that are illegal versions. 95%. So those 40% of all sales we have done on mobile, it's only 5% of installation on Android. So in the first place, we did not consider tablets, because tablets in the Android space are, to be honest, I don't know the current status of the latest Samsung flagship tablets, to be honest, but it's not as much as the iPad for sure. And in the first place, we are talking 2017. In 2017, the Android tablet market was non-existent, or it was all devices with Android 2 or 3. It was not manageable for us. But at the moment, Matthias decided, mostly proved that
I'm not sure decided by myself.
You know what I mean, but managed to bring the UI to the iPhone space, or to the phone space, to be more precise. The Android market opened, because on the phone side, it is not the same deal. But we had to do something that is very unconventional. There are, I did a stat recently, so I have the numbers in mind, but there are more than almost 19,000 unique device models on Android. 19,000.
That feels right.
That is...
We excluded manually 10,000 unique models. So the game can only run on 8,870 something unique device models. And we did that because the game is how can I say it? Is really hard on the GPU on mobile. To be honest, it needs a beefy GPU to work, and it helped us a lot because the ratings on Android are stellar. I think we are still at 4.8, I guess, something like that. I'm not very sure, but I'm pretty sure that if we let all devices open, because we support down to Android 6, so many trash devices run on Android 6, and if we did not that cleaning of the device compatibility list, I'm pretty sure the rating would be very lower, much lower than that.
So whose job was it to manually? How long did it take?
So, I will be honest. We did not do that manually. Not exactly manually, but I had to build a JavaScript tool that scrapped Google Sites and directly tapped into the document object model of the pages, of the web pages, to open, click a button, wait for 1 second that the server respond, do that again, etc. And the process with that script that is fully automated, it is 4 hours. So
that's really impressive.
When you launch this script, you have to be sure that it will be good.
Yeah. For the people listening who think 19,000, that's not possible, I'd remind people that there are refrigerators running versions of Android and stuff. And so, though it would be pretty slick to just be playing Crying Sons on the door of your refrigerator, just while you're standing there in the kitchen. That'd be pretty cool.
No, but you have to understand that, of course, there is almost 19,000 devices on Android, but not all devices would have been compatible with Crying Sun, even if we would have, because some devices are the first generation of Android, and those devices are deprecated, completely obsolete today. But I think there are 12 or 13,000 devices that are still compatible with Crying Suns, but that do not reach the minimum requirements in terms of GPU mostly, and CPU, because we have to have at least a quad core, I guess. But we had to Julian did the preparation of the list with a huge spreadsheet of all devices sorted by GPU, etc. And we decided to buy 1 or 2 devices in the very low end of our target, and we optimized the game for those devices, and that became the Android version. But to be honest, and I know Matthias will laugh at it, but I did the iPad port in the first place, and we released the game during the iOS 13 era. And the oldest iOS device supported at the time was the iPad Mini 4. That has an A8 chip, which is a dual core. And the next device has a quad core. And the gap between the two is huge. But even with that, the iPad Mini 4, when we did the initial port, was running better than a device on Android that was it was released in 2015, and it was running better than Android with a device that was released 3 years later. And a flagship device, I'm not talking about. So there are a lot of performance room on the iOS side, and it's not I wasn't believing it myself, but it was, performance gap is huge. And the fact that Unity uses for iOS IOL to CPP to build the game is a huge deal, because the mono runtime on Android is really slow. IOL to CPP on Android changed that, of course, but not to the same extent, but it changed that, of course, and in the end, games run very well on the latest phones and even in 60 FPS, but you can be sure you drain your battery pretty fast. But yeah, on iOS, it was we did many optimizations for the lower device. Yeah, but that's it. The other devices run the game very well.
And you said something there that's worth calling out, right? Like sometimes you have to make the hard decision to exclude some players, right? Like these types of devices, because ultimately, if you don't, they're going to play it, have a substandard experience, give low ratings, and then other people are going to see a game with low ratings. They're not going to play, and it kind of tanks an entire project, and excludes everyone in a way. And so, but I know it can be tough because I've seen, before when certain players excluded and they're just upset about it, and they're, and you get that, and that sucks. But sometimes you have to. I mean, the nature of fragmentation.
But what we wanted to do is to be sure that the game would be played, as you said, on devices that can provide a good user experience. Mm-hmm. But Google does not provide the tools to do that. It's very, very difficult to exclude so many devices at some point. And without the background in web design we have, both all of us in the company mostly, we wouldn't have been able to do that. Because scrapping the pages, accessing the document model, object model of every component in the page, clicking a button through a script, it's not a typical game dev tool, It's something that is tricky to do. So, but it's not in the interest of Google because they want to have all their users to have all the experiences, but that's just not possible. And the problem is different with the PC market because our lower target machine on PC is pretty old. I think we tested the game on a 2 gigabyte PC with Windows 7 32 bits. So yeah, the game runs pretty well on PC, but PC and mobile are two different markets, two different architecture on the hardware side. And I would say the Switch is another software architecture because the hardware is similar, but yeah, so test on the device, and as you said, you have to make some difficult choices sometimes. But if we have let all players test the game, I'm pretty sure the market share wouldn't be 40% of our mobile port. It would be much less. On iOS, the problem would be inexistent because we did what we need. Because you have mostly 7-10 devices to support, and they are pretty fast. But on Android, it's an impossible task.
Yeah. I have a couple questions. There's a flood of questions started coming in. First of all, I just want to say shout out to Humble, who's in chat to come support you guys. So thanks for showing up, Humble. Yeah. But Corner Kitten asked earlier, did development include any automated testing or was it largely manual testing? I think somebody from your team, the dev over at AltShift, is in chat, B. Marcogne. They said, we have a full collections. Yeah.
Bertrand. Hi, Bertrand. Is a former member, but a valuable member of the team. Yeah. And yes, we have some automated testing, but not in the gameplay part. Mostly in what we call game definition. So all assets, the core gameplay assets that are tested mostly, and some subsystems like the localization system is tested automatically. But now the gameplay part is mostly tested manually.
Yeah. Nice.
But we had a lot of unit testing and a lot of QA too. And we made QA with an external company who run that stuff for the gameplay part. But we, at the moment, we are talking about how we can find a way to automate some interface tests in Unity for future game and that kind of stuff to test simple scenario and see specifically to see if nothing is broken in between two different feature development and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, you have to understand that when we started working on the project and including unit testing, or we call it edit mode testing in Unity, play mode testing was just in its infancy. So it was very difficult to implement. There is not much documentation, and Cloud Build was not supporting it at the time. So for Crying Sense, we were just not able to use that, and in the end, the game is buggy for some parts because it is the random nature of the game. So we have so many combinations to test. So without automated testing, it's really complicated. But mostly the game runs well, and we have sometimes a bug that comes because it is a very specific situation that occur. And
those aren't bugs; those are features.
Yeah,
Those features of the darkest future.
Emerging gameplay, no problem.
That's right. Like, this is frustrating. Exactly. The darkest future is frustrating. This is what happens.
We are very careful with our save system, for example. The save system is critical for us, of course. We have a lot of testing test scenarios for most of the user interface because it is easy to test. But all the random combinations you can have in fight, it's an infinite work. So yeah, we can't test anymore today.
Yeah. So chat seemed really impressed that you create that great little web crawler. And Cypher said it's like benefits of being a software dev before entering game dev.
The bad thing with that crawler is that just after the release of Crying Sense on mobile, Google decided to change the console completely. So I have to redo it.
It's obsolete.
Yeah, it's obsolete.
Because of you.
But I have the inner working, so maybe I could remap it for a future game. But it's not on our plans today.
Oh, so then that answered the follow-up question, which was is the limiting of Android devices an active process, or you have stopped now? So I guess you're still.
No, it's still in the process because. More recent devices are more capable than those who existed when we launched the game. So it's not a problem today. We can let new devices come in, and we are pretty sure that low-end devices will land in countries where the game is probably too expensive to buy. So yeah, it's difficult. It's a difficult process to maintain in the end anyway. So
yeah, thanks. Corner Kitten says it's so clear that the All-Shift team seriously know their stuff. So yeah.
Thanks a lot.
We'll take a little break now, but we're going to come back. And after we come back, we should go into the editor and show all the magic that Christophe is talking about, all these great automations that makes working on multiple platforms so easy. And then we'll also go take a look at some VFX and some engineering and Unity hacks as well. But we'll be right back in 5 little minutes. Stick around, guys. And we're back.
And we're back.
Yeah. I hope you guys got a snack. I saw Mike got a cookie in. I know some of you are grilling some cheese sandwiches in
Grilled
chat.
fromage.
Grilled. We're trying to teach Mike more words than fromage.
So while we were on this little break here, I like to leave my headphones on so I can just listen to everyone's conversation when they don't know I'm listening. But then they all start talking in French. And I'm like, well, how am I supposed to spy on that? Like, because, I always tell people I don't speak Spanish, but like really don't speak French. So like, I don't. Anyway.
Nice. Chat, let us know what you got as snacks in chat. I would love to know, actually. But for those who are just tuning in, this is the second half of our stream with Crying Sons with the great folks here at AltShift. We've talked already about their great new game, the look and feel of it, how to develop on it, and how, as their team, who are primarily used to be web devs and engineers, have turned their focus onto game development. So we're just talking about multi-platform and developing for multiple platforms, some of the great experience, some of the not so great experiences. But we're going to talk about how they develop some custom tools to actually allow them to develop across those multiple platforms. So Christophe, maybe you could take it off, or Matthias, maybe you had something to actually add about
great recap, by the way.
Oh, thank you. I tried my best.
Go ahead, Matthias.
Yeah, I wanted to add a point about the development of this tool. At the beginning, we choose only to develop the game for PC and iPad specifically. So the challenge of the interface and making it work on the platform were easier because the the screen on an iPad is large enough to the interface to look almost like on the PC. But at some point, as we said earlier, we choose to add the mobile phone, iPhone, and Android in the game, and so we really had to push forward to develop this tool to make it possible to test in Unity. And if I have one advice for designing interface, is that think first console, mobile, then PC, because the PC is the easiest part, since you have the mouse and the keyboard. It's easier to interact, and it was really a challenge to rethink a lot of stuff to make it work for console and for mobile devices once we already made some hard choice on the PC version.
Yeah, and the fact is that a pointer on an iPad, on a touch device, is mostly a mouse, but the screen real estate in reality is much smaller. So the density you have on screen is not the same. So yeah, you have to think for the small screen first, and you can then do that, because of course a gamepad something, but also the real estate on the screen.
Mm-hmm. Plus your finger blocks your view.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Of the screen, I mean, when you're playing on a mobile device. Yeah.
Yeah. No, but on mobile devices, yes, the finger blocks the screen, but that's we will speak about it later. But we included some tweaks like the autopause on mobile, because when you have your hand above the device, you can see what happens on the battlefield. So it's tricky.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. So you had some stuff you wanted to show us?
Sure.
In editor?
So in editor, I'll let you switch to the So I will show you those tools directly in the context of Crying Suns. So we are using Unity 2018.4 at the time. We consider moving to more recent version of the editor, but we know that things can go wrong, even if it's mostly we have expelled most of the difficult plugins, etc. So we are pretty confident that the process with Unity will be relatively soft, but we want to be sure that everything works well. And moving from, for example, from 2018.4 to 2020.3, it's two major versions forward. So we have to do a complete QA of the game, and it's very costly. So we will do that when we will need, mostly when the game won't be supported anymore on some platforms. Like, I don't know, when Apple will decide to remove Rosetta 2 from macOS, maybe, I don't know, but or if the iOS version needs to be updated, I don't know. But so it's familiar but old version of the editor. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it's more rounded and less modern. So the first tool I wanted to show you is a tool that helped us manage a lot of time. It's not exactly multi-platform, but it is really designed to improve our iterating time. So for example, here I have an empty scene. I will add some 3D objects just to show my point. Up a cube, add a plane. So I don't have any light in it, but I can put one maybe. Okay, so yeah, a pretty basic scene. But when I click play, look what happens. It will take several seconds because the game is heavy to load. But this tool
is a good-looking cube.
Yeah, a good-looking cube, sure. This tool is called AutoSend. It does not work. Why not? Because it is disabled. That's it.
Because people are watching you.
Yeah, exactly. Every time, you can't miss. So this tool is designed to be able to edit a scene or a prefab or anything in the editor. You click play and you go to another scene. So as you will see, the screen has changed and we will be directly in the game. At the main menu, it will load. Let it. Maybe the cutscene, in the introduction cutscene, I don't know. Whoa, it's slow. Oh, main menu. The process is very important for us because most of the game systems are not tied to a specific scene or specific context. You have to have your battleships, your squadrons, your officers, etc. And we can test something in a more concise or confined concept, but confinement has taken another significance since 2020. So yeah, we used since the beginning of the production of the game, you used a term that is confined mode, but since 2020, it's not very suitable. So yeah, we have to find another word for that. But yeah, you can iterate on a scene, change something in a prefab, you click play and you are in the game directly. But not right in the context where you are, but you are in the full game with your save, with everything. So if you have to test, I don't know, a specific fight related to a specific event, for example, you can do that pretty easily. And the iteration time is really good. It's really good. You click stop, up, you come back to where you left your scene. So it's really, thank you, Wise. Yeah, I have a bar you can't see on screen, but I have a progress bar from Wise that I have to wait a little. This tool is very simple. I'm not even sure why it isn't included directly into Unity because no, but that's true because it relies on one single API you provide, Unity provides, and I just built a small interface around it, but it's really a call or a call back to a specific message. And as you see on screen in the preferences, so it's called auto scene, and you can load any scene you want. You can load anything you want in your project. I've done this preference panel myself, but you can disable or enable, and you can disable completely, or auto is the first scene in the build settings. So most of the time you will be in auto, but you can choose anything else. And it helped us a lot because you don't have anymore to work on a scene, save your scene, change to the scene you want to play, and click play. And some scenes we have in the game are more than 80 megabytes. So loading is a tough job for them. And we have a lot of prefabs. So yeah, it's iterating time is very, very, very long. So we have to.
Just want to say real quick for folks who might be listening, a lot of people might be asking why a tool like this actually is necessary, right? Like, oh, I've my game scene and I'm working my scene. I just hit play and I see it. Like, why do I need to go into a different scene? And you can correct me if I'm assuming this, but in maybe more sophisticated, more complex, more production games, the objects themselves are built in different scenes, or the prefabs are put together in different scenes from where they're loaded, or you might be trying to test a fight, but in order to test the fight, you need some store manager, which is loaded in a different scene, and so you need to go through the proper loading process. I can't show you right
now because I am screen sharing the windows of the editor, but in our build settings we have 22 scenes, and it's only the scenes. I think we have about hundreds, if not thousands, of prefabs in the project. So, of course, we cannot just put that all in one scene. And the other problem is that when you work collaboratively, you want to avoid collisions between people. And even if there is a tool that is underrated or not well known in the Unity space, it is Smart Merge. And Smart Merge, or called Unity YAML Merge, YAML Merge, because this tool is a lifesaver. We took a few months before configuring it in the project, but once we've done that, you can have two people working on the same scene at the same time, and if they don't modify the same object, everything goes fine most of the time. Yeah, sure. You have sometimes you have collisions, but at our it will sound very preposterous, but at our skill level, it's not a problem to resolve that conflicts. But smart merge resolve most of the conflicts, and you have nothing to do. It's very powerful, and we doubt it. We doubt it would be that powerful, but once we have included it in the project, it was.
It's surprising how few people know about it and use it, because you're right. I mean, it's great once you figure it out a little bit, right? And it helps to understand the YAML format a little bit, but it could be a real lifesaver.
I think it comes at some point. It comes down to documentation, to be honest. Mm-hmm. And for many years, I will be frank, it has not been the best side of Unity, the documentation part.
No.
And there has been many improvements on that side, and that's very great. I mean, the only it's been 2 years maybe that we have this little drop-down box in the documentation that helps you know that this particular method exists in all those versions. And that was a mess before that. It was and I think Unity YAML merge or smart merge is not well known because it is buried in documentation. Mm-hmm. And I think it is something that probably can't be configured by default in the project because Unity, as an editor, does not rely directly to Git on Git. Sorry, but mm-hmm. But it should be possible, I guess, to help with the setup. I'm pretty sure if something like a setup smart merge button in the preferences was existing, the tool would suffice way faster than it is at this point. But mm-hmm. Promote smart merge because it is really, really a time-saving tool.
That's another pro tip.
Probably a frustration-saving tool.
Yeah. And and I like you mentioning the scene loading tool as well. I've actually created my own tool that does the same thing because never working in the scene you necessarily need to test or the loading process.
And I won't promote too much, but I just recently I moved this specific tool to OpenUPM, so it can be integrated directly in the package manager for more modern versions. Because of course, in our current productions we use that tool too. So yeah. It is up to date with the latest even beta, I think, but I'm not sure about that. But at least 2021, it's okay. So now I will switch to the second tool we were talking about, the multi-platform tool. And here you see that I don't know if my cursor is visible, but we have 3 entries in the preferences panel. CryingSuns, of course, which are all the preferences we had for CryingSuns specifically, so we can skip tutorials, skip the fights, etc. Many things we use only in the editor, of course. And we have some tools, but that have been designed for mobile. But I think the mobile previewer that you have included in more recent version of the editor makes it mostly irrelevant at this point, but it's something that helps. It's like an abstraction layer for the safe area with the specific notch of the iPhone and many Android devices. So it helped us at some point to handle that correctly. Mm-hmm. And the tools that interest us today much is those platform debug tools in the preferences at the bottom of our preferences. So what is it? We designed a tool that helps us iterate very fast on multiple platforms at the same time. What is it? I load CryingSuns in the editor in a standalone mode, for example. So I will load for macOS in the standalone mode. And at some point I have a task to do for iOS. I can tell the editor that here, as you can see, the platform override is set to none. So if I click play, the editor will behave like if it was on macOS. So if I click play, for example, in the main menu, you will see that. few seconds. Always the same thing. The game load a lot of things. That's something we could have done better. That we load almost all the game
up front,
because all our definitions are tied to our prefabs that are tied to our meshes, texture, etc. So the game is not very heavy on the memory, but it takes a lot of time to load. But once it's done, it's mostly there, so it's not a problem. As you can see, if I hover the main menu, you have, on the continue game, you have something that displays that show where you are, what is your progress in the game. So there I'm in chapter 1, sector 1 of 3, and I'm on a planet or system that is called Ashuba. Okay, so that's the main menu in the macOS version of the game, on the Windows version of the game. Now, if I go back to my preferences, I still have this Y speaker progress bar, but if I go to my preferences and in the platform override drop down, sorry. Wise, hurry up. If I select, you can't see that, but if I select iOS all, no, not all, iPhone, better. If I select iOS iPhone and I click play, you'll see that the menu will be much bigger. The text will be much bigger because we had to address the spacing problem between the elements in the menu. And you'll see that the behavior of the menu is much different.
Did you create different prefabs for the different UI, or did you just create one UI?
In this
that
case
is just intelligent
specifically,
resizes?
it depends on the transformation we need. In this case specifically, you have both. You have a transformation that is applied directly to the object, and you have a different prefab because we are now on mobile. You see that the menu is different.
Mm-hmm.
And if I go over, you still have the over because the button reacts to the mouse. But on a mobile device, you would not have that. But you don't have anymore the small indicator of your progress. If you click on continue, you're presented a box that allows you to continue or to cancel, to show you your progress, and with much bigger buttons in the middle. And that's something we can do. Yes, I click play. I was on macOS. I stopped the playing. I changed the platform. I click play. I am on iOS. Nice. I didn't end up with 45 minutes of importing. I didn't have to close the editor or open a second instance on a different folder, etc. It's all in the same editor. And now I can show you what's exactly done with that. For the developers with us, we have a property in the application class, which is called application.platform. Problem is we can't rely on it because application platform, when you are in the editor, gives you Unity editor. Yep. And Unity editor, Windows, macOS, etc. But so we can't rely on it. So we had to work around this property and to work around another property, which is editor build settings.active platform, active target platform. So the fact is that I can show you right now, but maybe later I will screen share VS Code. We use VS Code as a cross-platform tool. We can't use Visual Studio because Matthias and I are on macOS, and there are no real Visual Studio on macOS. So we use Visual Studio Code, which is much lighter, much more extensible. But yeah, that's. I can say it's our fault, Matthias, I guess, but.
I wasn't going to say it, but
yeah. But I take it, no problem. I consider it is their fault, but everything's fine. So the process is that we build a huge wrapper around application.platform and editor build settings.active target platform in order to be sure that all our tools, all our components are behaving as we ask in this dropdown. How do we do that? So I will disable AutoSyn to show you how this works. So, for example, I will create a sphere to be completely So I have a sphere, I have a box, and I have a plane. Let's say that my cube is only, I will close the animator because I've done that. Let's say my cube is only for the desktop platform, for example. So I will add one of our components, which is called an object remover. If my computer up. And I will ask, this one is a little counterintuitive, but you check the platforms on which you do not want the script to run.
Mm-hmm.
And on all standalone platforms, this cube will stay. If I click on the sphere and I tell it that I want the sphere only on mobile. Escape. Do I have disabled? Yes. If I click play, the cube should disappear. That's a bit long. It will come at some point.
That's because you're streaming and all this other stuff. Plus Firefox is at 25 gigs and all that stuff.
I had to restart my computer completely.
I will say this is cool. Like I've seen this concept of like testing UI with like a switcher like that, but not so much as to even have this remover and to like fully integrate a tool like that. And that's really cool.
As you see, the cube is not disabled. It is not there at all. So we have a build post-process or pre-process for the scenes and the prefabs that parses all scene, all prefab at build time and at play time, and remove them when needed. So it's important to. I said prefabs, but prefabs are tricky beasts because we can't parse prefabs completely. We can parse prefabs that are instantiated in the scenes directly, but not those who are in the library. So we have another tool that is very similar to this one. I will change the cube, for example. We'll remove that and add an object disabler. And here you have several, two different modes. Disable the object at build. So, for example, when you have an object in a UI that you want to be disabled when you arrive on a scene, and you want to be sure it is disabled, even if the designer had let it enable by mistake, you want it to be disabled. So you can force it to be disabled with this tool. At build, just like the remover, at build, the GameObject.setActive will be set to false. And if we do that at runtime, it is during the start or awake, I don't remember exactly the point, but during the awake phase, the object will be disabled. So it is really very powerful. So yeah, I want it to be enabled on standalone. Yeah, Matthias?
I just want to add that it's really useful when you're working on interface. Speaking for myself, because you can let a lot of stuff on your scene that are visible when you are editing and you are working on it, and you know with that no problem of this object of it being present when you made play. So it assures you that you can safely do your stuff, design how you want, edit the object, and everything will be fine when you wield the play button.
Yeah, and here you can see that the cube, I am on a mobile version of the game, the editor, and the cube is disabled. It is still there because it's what we wanted. But the power of this tool is that we can do something that is not possible with in runtime, that is not possible at build. Is that if you look at this the platform list and at the bottom of the component here, if I click disable at build, you see that the sub platforms disappear. Because at build we have an issue, is that iOS is a platform as a whole. You don't have iPadOS on the side and iOS on another. So you have iOS. So at build, I cannot discriminate between the two. It's the same for the tablets. It's the same for the docked or not docked Switch. Of course, Xbox One, PS4, and PCs are not an issue. But if I want to be sure that, for example, this cube is not there for the iPad, but it is there for the iPhone. Oh, it's the inverse. No. Nah. If it so, I am in iOS.
The sound effects help.
Yeah, I am in iOS iPhone mode. So if I check this, the component won't apply. So if I click play, I should have the cube enabled and still there. It is, as much as said, when working with interfaces, it is really important. And with the iPad, mostly all the elements of the iPad are there on the iPhone and vice versa. But the scale is not the same. The scale, the placement, and you see there that the cube is there. It is well and active. So there's no issue with that.
Nice.
So those scripts are there to allow us to change the behavior platform by platform. But what if I wanted this cube much bigger, but just for the iPad? So I will remove this disabler because I don't need it. And we added a lot of what we called overriders. It is some components that will override.
You're still in play mode, by the way.
Oh, yeah, you're right. Thank you.
I've been there.
Yeah, me too. So I add a transform overrider on the cube. And for example, here, so I have a scale of 1. It's perfectly fine. And I want to, during the start phase, so you can animate it with update, fixed update, late update if you want to apply this after the animator has run. You can do many things, including controlling scale. And, I have a display bug. It's magnific. What you can do there is that, that's because my editor is too narrow. Okay. What I have here, I have control scale. And below that, I have my scale values that I have in the editor. But I can add an override. And I can tell that I am in iPhone mode. So I can tell for iOS, all iOS versions, I can, if I want, have this cube twice the size. And if I click play, as you will see, in a few moments, as always, the cube will be twice as bigger. And that's how we did with all of these tools. We did the main menu, for example. We did the cube is now twice as big. It covers almost all the sphere, and you can see the scale is actually 2:2. So with all those tools, we have a lot of overriders. We have done overriders for overrider. We have done overrider for text. For transform text mesh pro, because we use text mesh pro in the user interface. We have done for rect transforms, for canvas groups, and for animators, and for other productions we have done other overriders. But mostly we managed to provide our designers to some tools that help them to discriminate platforms on an interface. For example. We have some components or game objects that are dedicated to some stores. Mm-hmm. So we have of course a Steam manager, a GOG manager, an EGS manager, and all those components are removed from the build when you are on mobile or on Switch. We have made all those tools, and everything revolves around the application, the platform, and the editor build settings.active target platform. Mm-hmm. But the problem is that we can't use those properties directly. We have made a huge wrapper, and all our tools have to rely on this huge wrapper to be able to work. But the good part of it is that it is now well integrated into the studio. It has been beta tested many times, and we are confident in the fact that it could be really interesting for our future productions and for other studios, of course. and we hope to be able to release it at some point in some form. I don't know when, but yeah. And I would like to show you something in code directly. So I would maybe just disable my screen share for a split second, just the time to change my setting.
Just to add some points, we also include for Text Mesh Pro text, and we use a made translation manager, and we can do the same for the translation, because if we are in certain language, for example Japanese or Chinese, the font size must be bigger sometimes than others, so we use the same kind of stuff to modify the size of text, not only because of the platform but also because of the language of the game.
I will show you something, just launching VS Code to show you.
Yeah, localization can be real tricky, because even just the structural rules of language, it's not like word for word. I mean, this translated different languages, they're vastly.
Yeah,
I only recently started learning about that. It's just
we did not build any tool for that kind of structural language thing. We just provided full strings to the translators, and they provide us full strings back. So, but we have replacements, of course, for some values in it, mostly digits, but or in the Switch, some icons for the gamepad and so on. But one of the powerful things we added to the translation is that we have some translation keys. So maybe UI.exit.button.label, for example, which can be a key, a translation key. So it will be quit game, for example, in English. But we can change that and add a suffix to our key, which is maybe we use the tilde character in a small wave character. I don't know how to describe that for those who don't know. Who don't know it. We can add a suffix like maybe switch or mobile, and have a different key that is overridden just for the platform in question. So of course, when you have a text that says click on it on Switch, that does not work. You have to press A, or I don't know, but you have to have another text for that. But it is in the same place, in the same component. It is in the same localization in your location in your game files, and you don't want to duplicate every control every time. It's not practical. It's not efficient. So let me open in VS Code.
Speaking of platform-specific stuff, does the Switch version of Crying Sun support the amiibos? Because I just love the concept of these cute chibi characters floating in the darkest future timeline.
No,
where am I?
We joked about it at some point. To have some Easter egg if you put an amiibo on the console, and it would send you to a specific event, and you had, I don't know, a giant Mario floating in space.
Kirby just sucking everything in, like, oh no.
It was just a joke. So yeah, well, Kirby Planet would have been discussed at some point, but licensing issues, and it was another matter.
That's fair.
Yeah, if we can go back to to my screen share, maybe I can show you how we did the transform overrider that I just showed you. So we have a lot of mono behaviors, but mostly this is a class, an abstract class dedicated.
Could you zoom in on the code a little? Zoom in the code a little bit for the folks watching.
Sure.
There you go. Thank you.
Sure. I had already zoomed, not enough. So yeah, we have an abstract class for transforms, because we have transforms and rect transforms, but they do not behave the same. So I had to manage that through an intermediate abstract class. But the most interesting part is this. We have coded a lot of what we call overridable properties. And in fact, it relies on the basic serialization process of Unity. We have a specific property drawer for them, and we have this kind of properties for a lot of types. If my editor, we have a properties for almost any primitive type you have in the editor. And
Nice.
we decided to, of course, in some specific cases, to create custom overridable properties for other types. But in the end, you can override any value for any platform in the game if you like. And that's very, very powerful for us, because you don't have to have two prefabs for the same thing. Even if prefab variants have changed the deal for many things, and we use at some point in the UI prefab variants because it would be dumb to just not use them when it is more efficient. But in most cases, we just don't want to duplicate the code or duplicate the objects. So we just add this kind of property, and they display, just as I showed you earlier, they display like this, like the scale in the component on the right. You have the default value on the first line, the current value that is detected by the editor when you are working or when you are in play mode, and you have all the overrides, and you can add overrides for categories of devices or specific platforms or everything, even for the editor if you like. But I think we never used it at all.
Have you considered moving that stuff into scriptable objects instead of having that data living on the component itself?
It was considered at some point, but we have already a lot of scriptable objects in the project, and as those data are closely tied to the object that use them, we thought it made more sense to let them with them.
Sure.
But yeah, indeed, we could have a scriptable object that is a scale factor that is applied everywhere. But we did that in some form with the fonts, because of course we did not, how can I say it? We did not apply on every text object, on every transformative value. We have different fonts for font objects for different platforms, and this is where the addressable system came into play, because there is something that is very specific to the iOS platform. It is the aggressivity of the memory manager.
Yes.
Yeah, it is a nightmare. Not exactly a nightmare, but because the reason they did that is for the good reason. It says if you use on the iPad Mini 4, for example, if you use more than 57 or 67% of the total memory of the device, your app is removed. Removed from memory, so it's crash, mostly. Up. So at some point, we launched, so it is 67% is about 1.49 gigabytes of memory on this device. And when we launched the game for the first time, we were at 1.47. So really close to that limit. And mostly, you finish the tutorial, the game crashed. It was obviously not possible to work with that. So we tracked down every single asset and the memory footprint of those assets. We identified some very dumb mistakes we have done at some point, because we had huge sprites in the back of a scene that was never seen at all. So yeah, something like 16 megabytes of memory in a corner somewhere, or having a 4K texture on like a pixel in the end, in the form. Yeah, it was just dumb. So some of those things have been quickly resolved, but the memory problem in itself, we had to win back 200 to 300 megabytes of memory. So it was a huge deal. And yeah, the addressables came in. And that's saved. We could have done with the asset bundles, but we were not familiar with that because not for example, is not a big game. It's not it's not a game that is hungry for memory. So we have never put our hands in asset bundles or in addressables. But the addressables are very easy to use in the end. It's tricky on some parts, but mostly in the fact that at that time it was an asynchronous instantiation, so it was a bit tricky to be able to get back the references to the objects. But for loading fonts, for example, because the game is translated in Matthias 8 languages, 7 or 8, I don't remember, but there are 2 main culprits, Japanese and Chinese. And Japanese and Chinese only by themselves account for 64 megabytes of memory with the fonts, each language. 64 megabytes. It's huge. So, but in the first instance on mobile, we were loading all the textures of all languages for all fonts. That was
nice.
Completely dumb. But on PC, there was no problem with that.
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
Doesn't matter. So we loaded the fonts for the right language at the right time, and everything was fine. And mostly we did some other optimizations for the Switch. For the memory for mobile, but also for the Switch because we moved the 3D models of the petal ships to the addressables too. But that's pretty much all, I guess. The loading screens are pretty heavy because, as I said earlier, we are control freaks, and you can't have a loading screen that is slightly blurry because it is compressed. It is not acceptable by our standards. So we had to
slightly blurry, still blurry.
Yeah, blurry is still blurry. So yes, even on a 4-inch device. Yeah. So we had to move them to addressables, although because each textures was 16 megabytes. So yeah, we had to do something about that. But yeah, that was all, and that's it. I guess most of the multi-platform job after that was done mostly by Matthias doing the design for the UI and all the iterations we had with it. And I can show you maybe something, and Matthias can comment over me if I show the way the command center behaves with the docks and the hangars, which is very different from the standard version to the mobile version, and how you work with it. So I will show you first, and I will let Matthias the standard version, and after that the mobile version, and Matthias can explain what he did about that.
Yeah, but the big part, the big challenge was you don't have over on mobile devices. So what you get when you get your mouse over an item and see a contextual window appearing, you can provide the same thing on mobile phone. So you have to find other way to bring the information to the user, and usually you have several steps of touching or tapping or letting if you let your finger on the screen to let something happen. The problem is that your hand and your finger is on the screen, so you have difficulties to see what you want to show. So we had to rethink a little bit is a euphemism. We have to rethink the interface to make it more user-friendly on mobile phone, to make things bigger, because when you have a 5-inch device, it's not the same that when you're on the computer. Even if you look your mobile phone in a closer position, you have to change a lot of steps. So maybe Christophe can illustrate that by
So here you have on the left side, you have what we call the different subsystems of the battleship. So you have the hull, the squadrons, and the weapons. And when you click on the squadrons, you have the hangar, the whole garage of the different squadrons you have, and you can indeed hover over the elements because you have a mouse. It's not an issue here. It is my officer, so I can assign an officer to my squadron. It's pretty good for a mouse. It's not an issue. But of course, you can't have that on mobile. So, what can I test that the hangar is working correctly? Oh, it's standalone. It's okay. Now I have to test on iPhone, for example. So I will go back to my preferences. Wise is...
It's your friend today.
By the way, chat is really appreciating your sound effects. They said that they do the same thing with their art director, and everyone understands what they're talking about.
Real quick, while we're waiting for Wise, I do want to say, just for the folks who don't know, addressables, by the way, because we talked about it a few times.
Yeah, sure.
It's a system by which you can kind of treat your stuff generically. And so you could say, hey, give me the UI, and it'll give you the UI that you want to load for this particular platform or scenario. Or, you could use them as similar to asset bundles. You can use them similar to like resources.load. But it's just a way to asynchronously load kind of anything, right? And it's actually built on the same technology as asset bundles, but with, just a lot of helpers, because with asset bundles, it's all very manual. And Addresses is a great system.
I think why I did not explore asset bundles before is that the amount of overhead to make them work is huge.
Well, that's the reason we created addressables. So you would never have to do that with asset bundles.
Mostly to build addressables, it's a click of a button, and that's huge. That's really huge. And it was not always simple to implement addressables due to their asynchronicity. But in the end, in memory, it's less hard on the memory. It's less complicated to reference objects because you have an object picker on an addressable reference, an asset reference. So it's good tool, but it's not perfect. I had some people when you're working with asset bundles that are local to your game, it is a game changer. Really, for us, it has been a game changer. Mm-hmm. If you're working with online asset bundles, I don't know. We have no experience with that. But with local assets in your game that shipped with your game, and if you work on consoles, it is a game changer because you only ship the main bundle, not the asset bundles that comes with the addressables. If you have just fixed a bug in code, for example, it creates patches that are way lighter. It's a game changer for us. Not pun intended. So I am in the same place as before, and you can see that the interface is slightly different. For example, I don't have the hangar button that was there before, and if I click on the squadrons, watch carefully, it is much bigger than before. As Matthias said, we added several steps to emphasize the context for the user.
Yeah. To explain, the idea was to keep the interface the closer to the PC one, but it was not possible on a small screen to interact with it with your finger because the button and everything were too small. So we made choice to make it bigger, and for that we had to hide the other parts of the interface because if not, it will not be possible to see everything. So we add a step where you click on a subsystem of your battleship and have the interaction possible after that. And the interaction are almost the same. The difference is that you have to tap on an item to see the information, and the information stays at screen till you do another action and close that panel. And as Christophe has shown it, the switch between the two interface are really easily done with the tool we developed, and lot of components are used in the two interface. We change some part of it, but for example, the prefab that are used to show the squadrons are the same on PC and on mobile, but they are just resizable. And some other, like all the container of the subsystem are different. So we have different prefab for that and same prefab for other. And some of the stuff, for example, as you can see on the screen, some buttons like the local system map button are the same on PC and on computer, but it's just the overridable rect transform that will change the shape a little bit and scale it to make it at the right size for different platform.
And
that's awesome.
that's something that's a bit tricky with this interface. So we had, as I said at the beginning, we tend to use a diegetic interface, so something that is embedded into the world. So all the interfaces that I touch with my mouse and you would touch with your finger on a device is in fact the head-up display for the characters into the game. This whole interface is projected onto the glass panel that is between those characters in the command center and the space beyond the glass. But sometimes you have some difficult decisions to make. Here at the bottom left, you see that Caliban, this some kind of mechanical octopus, yes, it's in front of the interface. It can interfere with your interaction. So on the PC, we decided to let it like this. So in some cases, it can interfere. It won't block the click at any moment, but it will be in front. On mobile, we decided to just remove it. If you click on the weapon, the octopus is gone, because at some point, the function dictates the form at some point. So yeah, on mobile we have no choice for that. But yeah, on PC it has been a requested feature to move Caliban away when it is there. But we did not manage to find a good solution. But on mobile and console, it goes away, and it is some kind of tricks you have to do sometimes to give some comfort to the player.
So speaking of Caliban, I know a lot of folks have looked at that, and I know you guys even were talking a little bit about that. There's a lot of curiosity about how that character was made, right? And just because you're talking about sprites, you're not using really 3D models. So can you guys talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, sure. Let me just disable a few things. I guess Wise will come into play. Oh no Wise. Fine. I will disable auto scene, and I will load a specific test scene I prepared earlier.
Actually, Caliban was realized by Louis Julien, who was our pixel artist. So there is a lot of stuff in Crying Sun that has been made by Louis Julien, who is a pixel artist, and that have been transformed to be, I don't know, not really in the rule pixel art to fit the need of the game. For example, the battleship, and Caliban is one of them, because we use different techniques to animate him. That's not really pixel art.
To be completely fair with our teams and former collaborators, many of the characters in the game have been originally designed by someone that his nickname is Fog Ryu, and it's a pixel artist too, but he no longer works with us. But it was there at the beginning of the pixel art work, and he designed some of the first iteration of Caliban, and indeed Louis Julien continued on it. And as you can see, Caliban, so I'm not even sure it is an octopus. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It is a nexopus. I don't know. But it is not 3D. It is completely flat. And we have built, indeed, we, Julian, built it through a software that is called Spine, which is done by a company that is called Esoteric Software, and which is closely tied with the Unity ecosystem because they have a very powerful exporter for Unity. And in fact, it is not a single sprite. It is a single sprite. It is a single texture, for example, for to be more correct. Let me get the material and the texture.
I'll also just say Fogru is in chat, so careful if you want to start bad mouthing him or anything. Then just... Oh no, I'm just teasing.
Thanks, Fogru.
Where is my texture? Which is here. Up. Come here. It's here. So yeah, this is completely unreadable and ununderstandable texture that composes Caliban. But Spine, in fact, is a software when you can import all your different parts of a character and assemble it like a puppet. But you can also animate with freeform modifiers that will deform, that will change, alter the shape of your sprites. So I know that in a previous episode of Creator Spotlights, you had the team of Karchak, if I'm not mistaken, and they showed us because I was watching the stream at the time. They showed animation, but only with the puppet. I think they do not do freeform modifiers on sprites in their case, but we did because we wanted to have this kind of 3D feeling, and Spine and the tools that are similar to Spine, but once again, we started working in the game in 2017, so many of the software that are available today were not available at the time. So we started with Spine, which was very powerful already. And we composed Caliban into Spine, and we started to add some bones. So just like a skin mesh in a 3D environment, it will create a skin mesh of the sprites, and the bones will be able to generate some kind of I don't know if inverse kinematics was handled at the time, but you can generate animation based on bones. And as you can see, there were a lot of bones on Caliban. Even the editor can display all of them at the same time. I guess I've checked earlier, there are 70 bones per tentacle.
It's just a couple then.
Yeah, just a couple. So I can't even do the math. It's 420 bones only for the tentacles, without accounting for the ends of the tentacles, and the body, and many other things. And the animation of Caliban, we wanted to have, as Matthias said earlier, we wanted to have that pixel art feeling, but not that pixel art limitation. We wanted to be able to animate things smoothly, having 60 FPS if possible, more if the computer can run it. And and we ended up with that. I don't know if it's fluid on the stream, but on my screen it is at least. It's a consolation. But we have a lot of, we have to maximize the play. We have a lot of different animations for the character. So I can make it, for example, I can make it threaten. So if you have a character here, clearly you're in danger. Of course, during the exploration phase, when you go from planet to planet, it is also not a sidekick, but a character with which you will interact a lot during the dialogues. It will give you a lot of lore. It will give you a lot of advices along the way. It will, at some point, we made him bring jokes in the conversation. But we had to rewrite them and write them off the game because the tone was not right. It's not a game in which you joke a lot. Clearly, you have to take it seriously. So yeah, we removed most of the jokes, but some of them are there, a little darker, but some of them are still there at some points, and it is also the kind of character that is not very empathic, so it does not very understand what humans are. He is without spoiling the game at all. It is an artificial intelligence that considers itself way above the humankind. So yeah, it's not very nice, to be honest, in the first place at least. But yeah, it was done with Spine. It has been a lot of work, and most of the work we've done with Caliban is only in the introduction cutscene. Yeah, it's always the case. You spend 80% of the time you spend of something very good is seen by 2% of the people. And if I have an advice for game developers, don't spend too much time on your ending cutscene. Only 2% of the people will see it. Don't waste all your money on that.
That's pretty good, actually.
That's not a good deal.
Is the ending scene just Caliban doing a stand-up comedy bit with all the jokes you cut out, and that's why it's so divisive? Like, either love it or hate it? And the sons cry from laughter.
Without revealing anything, Caliban is not in the cutscene. That says a lot of things. But no, in the introduction, it is the first character you see in the game. So we wanted it to be on par with the rest of the game visually, in terms of animation, in terms of how can I say it? In terms of user experience. You get this huge intro cutscene. I spent a whole week just to integrate different elements in the intro cutscene. Yeah, a full week, and in the end, it is maybe 2 minutes, 1 minute, 2 minutes. I don't remember, but yeah, it is the first thing that people see.
It sets the tone.
It sets the tone, exactly. So we had to make it really good, but one thing we wanted to do, and we weren't able to do, so as Matthias said, we had to cut a lot of things. In the first place, we wanted Caliban, the original intention is to Caliban to be some kind of floating body. And he uses its tentacles to attach himself to the environment, and its body just floats. But we wanted to do that dynamically, procedurally. And once again, the intro cutscene is 2 minutes on a game that is basically 25 hours long. So we cut it. We did it by hand because it was just impossible to do in a short amount of time, and none of us had any experience with procedural animation. So in the end,
we wanted to have Caliban be able to interact when you are in the game, in the command center with the UI and that kind of stuff. We wanted him to be more living and doing stuff and react to what button you are clicking. But it was too complicated, so we choose not to go that way. And I think we
did great with that.
We did great not doing that.
Yeah. And we have, I will show you where Caliban is integrated the best. It's in the main menu. And in the main menu, when you click New Game, Caliban, I don't remember. No, it's not in the scene when you are in the main menu. There's only this wall of cryo chambers in which many how can I say it? Clones of your character are lying, waiting for you. It's here. I wasn't remember correctly, but something that people never saw. I will show you. let me pose it, something people never manage to identify at least. Do you see those counters? Those counters have a special signification for us because each time you launch a new run, the counter augments 1 because you're going to the next clone.
Oh.
But they start at a very specific value. They start at 1138. And if you don't have the reference, it's another sci-fi reference. It is
THX.
THX.
Oh,
1138.
nice.
1138.
Oh, good one, Mike.
Yeah, but
That's really good.
so far, it's an Easter egg no one ever reported.
Oh,
So
that's really cool, actually.
Well, not everyone's going to report it.
Yeah, of course.
Hey, by the way, I couldn't help but notice the number there started at 113.
I have to admit, I am a little disappointed with that because I implemented it and no one saw it. Of course, it was not very long. Yeah, so Caliban, it's here. You have this kind of small animation in the menu, but if you click New Run, I will scrap my save. Yeah, if you click New Run, you see the whole animation of Caliban that will wake up your character with this whole sequence. You can skip it, but I won't, of course.
And that's the shader you talk about in there. Yeah,
exactly. We did. We are in the process of making a little retrospective on some significant visual effects we did for the game. So indeed, there is this kind of light coming into the character to wake it up, and how we did that. And there is another entry on the space haze, this kind of fog you have in space. I just released something I can show you in the command center, which is how we rendered not the user interface in the glass, but the glass itself, because it has to be. You're not in a, how can I say it? You're not floating in space. You have to be preserved from space because without that you die. Without the glass that protects you from space, you die. You suffocate in space, and you probably even worse. But this glass has almost no representation in the world. It's mostly transparent, but you have to see it anyway. So, of course, the user interface helps it, but the user interface is not all. And if on this color it won't work, I will just move to another system. Yeah, and
I always thought this effect was cool too.
This effect was cool, but maybe Matthias one day will do a retrospective on it because I'm not the author of this one, so I won't do a full coverage of that. But if you look carefully, I will zoom a little. If you look carefully at the glass, you will see that the characters reflect on it. And we have, during the transition between one planet to another, you have a sort of glare in the glass that's moving with the orientation of the star. And that helps ground, once again, the command center and the characters in a real world, some kind of real world. Yes, in pixels and some kind of voxels, but yet a real world, darker world. But
darkest.
Darkest. Exactly. But I hope someday we will do some games less dark than that. But
yeah,
not in the nearest future.
That looks really amazing. Actually, that's really cool.
Yeah, I think that's everything I wanted to show about Caliban. The last entry of the post I'm writing on Medium, it would be about this very special effect that we wanted to have almost from the beginning. We wanted to have this kind of rim around the characters. And it was tricky to do because Caliban is moving. It is not predictable. It has to be real time. And we had to rely on compute shaders to provide this kind of effect. It has been a long process for me to learn how to do compute shaders because it was the first time, and it was although relatively new in Unity when we did that project. So it was, and unfortunately, this effect is not present in the mobile and the Switch version because GPU could not keep up. So we had to cut it. But yeah, it's pretty solid effect, and I'm really happy with the result. But yeah, that's it.
It's cool,
That's
the
it for
little
Caliban,
things
I
like
guess.
just the reflections in the glass and stuff. Like you don't even pick it up. You would notice if it wasn't there, right? And just the
Yeah, that's it.
the fine little details and stuff.
And I will try to see if I can reach a station. Let me try. Well, we will go to the fight.
Mess them up.
Will I be able to? Yeah. It's very
that's
easy to.
cheating.
Yeah, it's completely cheating. No, I wanted to show you something. Let me check for one station. Which one?
Yeah, what he used, it's a small tool we made to choose between events because we had more than 300 events in the game.
Yeah, 400 even.
So we needed a way for the writers, for example, to test and for the QA of localization to test the event in context. So we made a small interface in the game to be able to switch directly from one event to another.
Yeah, the debug mode is obviously not available to regular players, but yeah, we can iterate faster with that, of course, and it's pretty common in video games. What I want to show you, because we are talking about the effects, I will bring the frame debugger. I managed to reach it. Analysis. I hope it won't crash, because it's pretty unstable in this version. Up. Yeah. So let me look for that. So. Okay, so here is a map, a depth map that is produced by every opaque object in the game, in the space part of the game, not on the command center. And after that, we continue to render all the elements. Skybox. Vectors is not interesting itself. We apply everything that is the sun or planet. So all the passes that I have also a detailed article on Medium on how we built the planet shader.
So I'll say it's pretty cool to see the different parts of the planet itself.
Yeah, because we wanted to have that kind of that atmosphere, the animation of the clouds. Of course, it is a gaseous planet, so you don't have that. But post processing, says it's bloom. I don't. Yeah, it's it. So here you have the whole image without what we call the space haze. That's it. This kind of fog we could have in space. It is absolutely not physically accurate. It is completely an artistic decision. But it was very important to have this kind of atmospheric presence of the stars, of the light, and to be able to read better the space. And if you look here, precisely here, you can see that the battleship that is in the front is almost confound with the station, but the station is much further. Maybe I can show you in the scene view. I shouldn't have done that, but yeah, the hierarchy is a little complex. So here is the battleship, and you see that the station is really far from the battleship. But if I look into, so I've lost my position. Yeah. So, but here on the screen, once it's projected on the screen, you have the sensation that both of them are on the same plane. But that's why we added this kind of atmospheric. Why not? Wait, it is not working. That's it. Yeah. Wait, not working. Yeah. And there you can see that the sun provides this kind of ring of fog, and it will help with it's not perfect on this specific example, but it will help most of the time. It will help bring some kind of density of matter, of fog between those two elements. And it's very subtle in this example, but mostly when you are on a system that is close to the star and not on a planet specifically, it's very easier to read the space,
especially
this way,
because the scenery is static, and when you are in 3D and it's static and you have pixel art and that kind of stuff, it's difficult for the eye to perceive the distance and specifically in space, because since it's object you don't know the real size they have, it's difficult to project yourself and say, okay, so this object is at 10 feet, maybe 1,000 feet. It's really difficult. So you have to use some tricks to recreate the space between objects and to help the player see the differences between the object and have a feeling of perspective and size.
And there is something we had to rely on, and it was somewhat unexpected, at least for me. We had to rely on the existing knowledge of the player, because there is a gaseous planet here on screen, and gaseous planets are generally much bigger than telluric planets, and it helps giving some scale to the scene to have this kind of planet. But we had to make them bigger even on screen, because you cannot rely just on that. But as the player, if the player knows that a gaseous planet is generally a giant planet, it gives even more scale to the experience. And there you could think that the station is either very far from the planet or very close but huge. That's depend on how you read the scene, but both are valid interpretation of the scene.
Mm-hmm. Just now when you were stepping through the frame debugger, which is an awesome tool for anyone who doesn't know how to use it, check it out.
Sure.
When you were going through the ship, you could see how it's built with all these different sprites, and this is something you had mentioned before, that the ships are actually these collections of sprites and stuff.
Yeah,
I wanted to see if you could show us that.
Yeah, sure. The battleship. So if you can just switch to the screen of Matthias for a second, and if you can show you the 2 or 3 last steps of the elements we had earlier.
1 second, I have to. Okay.
Because in fact, battleships have become a very. It is one of the cases in the game that has been very iterative. Mm-hmm. In the first place, we had only placeholders for a long time. We had only placeholders that was some kind of coffins. It was shaped from the top. Can you scroll to the first Matthias, please?
I'm on it.
Yeah. Okay. So it was this kind of coffins, and it was really placeholders, but really pretty fast, I guess. Directly at the second slide, we add some visuals of the battleships. Just a second one, please.
The second one?
Yeah, okay. Just for a second. And what we wanted to have is for the player to see his or her ship and the one of the opponent. But the problem is we are on a top-down view, and you have those ships that are from the side. And it was completely incoherent. So we moved to top view, and
I mean,
at
it's
some
space.
point, I'm
You can do
yeah,
that.
it's sure. But
There's no down
it
in
was not
space.
very. But if we were really in space, why do you fight on the plane? There's no.
It's tradition. That's why.
Yeah, it's the same issue. But yeah, so at some point we rotated the battle ship to see them from the top. But once again, the viewing for the player was not very appealing. It is the top. It is not bad, but it is not that. And in the end, I'm not sure the decision, but maybe you said that when I was away, when my computer crashed earlier. But at some point, we wanted for the hexagons that were closer to the player to be more easier to interact with, and we inclined the plane. And so the problem is that if we look at battleship, let's do that. Originally, battleships. No, don't go to my screen for the moment, please. I think
There'll be a big reveal in a moment.
Yeah, that's it. Because I have some screens, or maybe my screen will be fine. So I have some screen captures, if I'm not mistaken.
I know you guys watching the stream can't see this, but we're seeing all sorts of secrets right now on his desktop.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh man, look at that. That's amazing. So just things you'll never see again.
So yeah, you can move to my screen share, no problem. So this is a battleship view from the top. So we can see already in that position, you can see some kind of sprite layers, some kind of sprite sandwich. And if I play this little video, you will see that we designed at some point a tool to use some kind of parallax, some spacing between the different sprites to adjust them more easily. And we could make the battleship rotate. And in fact, the battleship is not rotating at all. It's only the maybe in this version it is already rotating. But at some point we had a tool. The sprites were only shifting away from another, and it was generating this kind of parallax effect. But Siri is interrupting me. I've never asked her anything. Yeah, it's a problem with an Apple Watch. Siri is always too close. But as you see at the end of the video, when we went real 3D and we put the battleships with that angle, for the player it was not very a problem because the battleship was closer, so the angle was less pronounced. Was less important, but for the opponent, it was not possible to get away with that. So at some point we had to produce some kind of 3D, some kind of real shape for the battleships. So let's get a battleship on screen.
Just to add some point about that is that all the small ship on the battlefield are designed with the same techniques. So we have multiple sprites stacking one on each other that mimic the sensation you have some 3D, and we have done the same with the big battleship, and because we wanted to the battleship at first were designed with a top view and a front and a side view. So we wanted to have this side view visible not only in the main command center, but also during the fight, because we thought that it was interesting to have the same visual on the boss space to make it easier for the player to recognize the battleship and to see the 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 changing of space from the exploration mode where you're in the command center and the battlefield when you fight.
So you're saying it's all lies,
Exactly.
just deceit.
Yeah, and
Ships are
you
real.
see, it is all lies, but really, because if I look at the battleship from the bottom, there's a lot of holes. In fact, you see, it has no bottom. It only sprites for the top. So yeah, I would just. We have each battleship is divided in 6 modules because what I wanted the other way around. Each modules had to be destructible, so we can. Where isn't that? So we have 2 versions of them: a version that is damaged and version that is intact. Because at some point in the gameplay, you can lose your hull can be destroyed partially. You can have up to 4 bars of hull, I guess, for big 6. Sure,
That's
6?
why.
Yeah. Okay.
That's why there is 6 parts.
Yeah. Okay. Up to 6 bars of hull, and each time you lose a bar of hull in a fight, we will generate an explosion and change the module from one to another. So if I take this intact module in itself, inside you'll see that we have full what we call the layers. So it's in all the sprites, and we have the mesh, which is and we have the mesh, and if I put them both, you can see that the sprites are only completely unlinked to the mesh, in fact. And why do we ended up with this situation is that in the first place, as I said, we wanted top down, that we wanted from the side, etc. But we have no real 3D artists in the team, and even those who have some kind of experience in 3D, like Matthias and myself, we were busy with everything else. So it was not a possibility for us to model all the ships in 3D. And we had already invested such an amount of money in those sprites, and at some point we thought, but why not just building a sprite that is in fact the side? Because if I go out in ortho, in fact, if you look at the battleship from the side, it is perfectly pixel art. Almost like a voxel model, but it is not voxel. But if you look in 3D, you will never see the battleship this close in the game. But if you look at the battleship, in the end, it is some kind of a closed model. Its pixels are really close to one another, and we had to be sure that we could see them. Yeah, we just had to produce this side view of the model, which was already almost done at this point, because we used until this point we used the side view of the battleships during the events in the exploration phase. The battleships where you interact with their captains and officers, they are already displayed. So we used those textures. We expanded on them to fill the walls because they were not exactly matching, and we projected them on the side of the battleships. And if you look closely, just let me move this light at the front. If you look closely, there is a little trick. Those textures are planar projected. So, yeah, on the faces that are perpendicular to the view, yeah, there is no texture, in fact. It's only the pixels that are projected along the texture. So we saved a lot of time and a lot of money with that technique.
Mm-hmm.
But we had to do some other optimizations along the way because, as I said earlier, we ended up with a draw code problem because sprites and the mesh are not on the same materials, are not on the same textures. They ended up interfering with each other because the sprites are put in between if the different stage of the meshes. So yeah, it became an issue, but the good part of that is that we ended up having full control on lighting. As you can see here, I'm moving a light. This is not a Unity light.
Mm-hmm. I was going to ask.
Yeah, those models do not react to standard light, and we are not using URP. We are in the built-in rendering engine because at this point the SRP was not a thing yet. And we wanted at the very beginning of the project, and I'm sure Matthias recalled that, we were working on cutscenes in 2D. Yeah. And we wanted to have this kind of projected shadows, like soft shadows, but in 2D. That you have a dangling light on the ceiling, and it projects us really, how can I say it? Blackened shadows, darkened shadows on some places, but bright light everywhere. It's this kind of high contrast visuals. So we decided to build our own lighting solution for that. In the end, we did not that the solution for the cutscenes, but we ended up with a very good lighting solution for the battleships. And we have a very fine control, and that's something I was missing from my 3ds Max years. It is a very fine attenuation on the lights. And here you can see that we have a near attenuation, we have a far attenuation, we have a max light distance. Of course, you can use the color of the texture to give some kind of window is always going everywhere. It's
man versus machine.
Yeah, that's it, because I have a 2-monitor setup, and generally my Unity editor is on this other monitor, so many windows are on the wrong screen. It's very frustrating, but I'm there.
I believe in you.
Yeah.
That's it. Fine.
There it is.
Up. So if I can make it.
Why is it that everyone goes red when they want to show the color of a light? They always go red.
Yeah, I will please Matthias. I will go a little pink.
Yeah, better.
Matthias really likes blue and pink. And as you can, it's not bright enough. So as you can see, we have an attenuation of light here. The light, I can go full on with the lighting, and you see a really big cutout on the light, but it is not. Even if we are not physically accurate, we have another direction which is in an in-between. We want an atmosphere, but we want something that in which the user can immerse himself. So we cannot have this kind of hard-cut lighting. So we have this kind of attenuation, and of course you can duplicate the lights to have more, and everything works as intended. That's it. So yeah, this kind of lighting helped us, although to really fine-tune the lights on the various battleships, because if I look at, I will delete this one. If I look at scrap a battleship, no, this battleship comes with a light itself. It has a light in the belly. It has many lights, in fact, green lights mostly, and we wanted to be sure that the light will be contained in a specific space and bring the right color to the scene. So yeah, it was
it's a cool solution.
It came with a lot of challenges because we we had to implement layer exclusions. We had to implement how can I say it? In the command center, you have lighting in the command center, but at some point, don't ask me why, the lighting of the command center started to impact the lighting of the battleships during combat, but they are way too far. But you have one scene in 2D, which is with a specific camera, with another scene in 3D that has another space referential. So it was a mess at some point, but we are pretty happy with the results. I think the solution won't cut the other productions mostly for artistic directions purposes, but
But
Nice.
when I want to add is that this system of light allow us to easily make a lot of light on mobile phone, for example, where it's limited. So we could add a lot of light, for example, on the battlefield. Each bullet sent by the ships can light another thing, and we have no restriction on that part. The only problem was the performance issue. We had to rework a little bit the detection algorithm because it was a little bit heavy at computing all the light and all the object when you have a lot of bullets sent by.
Matthias is totally right. One of the issues we had with the artistic direction on mobile is that you can have one direction light which projects shadows and a certain amount of point lights but no shadows, etc. But we wanted on the battlefield, we wanted to have 100, 200 light sources at some point. With very heavy fight setups, you can have a lot of bullets that produce light itself. And if you look closely, I will show you in a fight, in a specific fight. But if you look closely, when a squadron is beside the opponent battleship, you can see the light on the battleship. That is the bullets enlighten the battleship. But indeed, we had to do a lot of optimizations. I wonder if I can show you what we ended up with.
Yeah, for folks listening, like when you're in forward rendering, which is a lot of mobile devices, especially older devices, right? Each light adds exponentially to the draw call, right? So if you had 4 draw calls and you have a light, now it's 8, 2 lights, it's so on and so forth.
Yeah, that's exactly that. The problem we had is that we wanted that much light sources, but we wanted that low draw calls. So we implemented optimizations that are very. If we opted for a deferred rendering path, for example, we would have been probably. We would have saved a lot of time, but I'm not sure we would have this kind of control. But in the end, what we did is that, as you can see in my Unity editor, so I have the module 6 that is selected at the time. I will disable the other ones. This way you will be. And on the intact object, you see a yellow box that appeared. This yellow box is how can I say it? Is the bounding box of the object somewhat, but it is not world oriented. It is not world aligned. Sorry, it is not world aligned. It is a bounding box that helps us optimize the detection of light sources. Every light sources that reach that bounding box is included in the automatic list of the object, if it is the case. And here you can see in the components, in the inspector, here you can see that we have a component that is called a fake light consumer proxy. So a lot of complicated naming here. But this proxy is here to manage this cube, this yellow box. And here you can select only for characters. For example, for characters in the command center, we only want the lights of the command center to interact with them. So we opted for a specific listing, manually attributed listing of lights. And there is no computation. The lights are there, they're provided to the shader, everything is good. You can have auto only that will use this bounding box to identify which lights are generating some kind of influence. We had to limit to at least 10 lights per object, but it is not 10 lights on the wall, since it's 10 lights per object. For memory allocation issues, memory management, etc., we had to limit, but 10 lights is already
a lot
enough.
Yeah.
And we have some kind of mixed mode. You can have up to 10 listed lights if you want, but you can have 4 listed lights, and you can provide an automatic detection for the 6 others. And lights are detected by intensity, distance. Many parameters are involved in that. But in the end, even on mobile, we were able to make the game run with most of the time on between, I would say, 50 to 150 lights, dynamic lights during fights. So
that's amazing.
Yeah, it's a big deal. But at some point, I wanted to make an optimization, and I did a deferred rendering pass of a deferred version of this tool. But we cannot use it because it is not compatible with Spine, because it only works with opaque objects and it has no transparency management, as many deferred rendering passes. We had to. We did not use it, but it's there. It's there somewhere. Maybe someday we will use it, but it's somewhere. Yeah.
I want to mention that when you said 150 lights, that I definitely avoided making the joke about the brightest future. So I just want that to be appreciated. And speaking of light too, it's funny for anyone who goes back and maybe watches the recording of this, we get to watch like in real time it get dark where Matthias is.
Yeah.
Because it started so bright. And everyone's talking about how like nice his office was, and now it's all dark where he's at. It's just the sun has gone down.
Yeah. And I know maybe we want to let the devs at Altshift actually go have dinner, because you were very kind to stick around for a solid 3.5 hours
Yes.
for our
No
stream.
problem.
Yeah. But I wanted to ask one or two few more questions.
Sure.
Obuskad asked a question earlier, is like, so then do you think you'd have optimized your game enough, or could there have been more that you could have done?
On the optimization, so performance, I think we could have done better on some part, but I think it's enough. At some point, you have this limit, this frontier between what is good and what is good enough, and I think it's running pretty good on mobile phone, on Switch, and on PC. So if we had to make some stuff, personally, I think it's not on that part we need to focus. Depending, the only side of that is if people or players are saying that the game is laggy, or that kind of stuff, we would address that. But
And we did in the past.
yeah, a lot.
So
Thanks.
we have a very important consideration. At least I can't speak for the others, but for me it's very important to fight against obsolescence of the hardware. There is no reason for a game like, for instance, to not run on a machine, on a computer that is maybe 9-10 years old with a solid graphics card for the era. But yeah, you can run on a 10-year-old machine at 30 FPS and have a pleasant experience. And granted, sure, it is not 120 FPS on a 144 Hz display with a RTX 3090 that nobody can buy at this time. But you can play, and that's important. First, for us as creators, so many people can buy the game. It's important that the most players we can get playing the game, the most we should. And it's important as a player because it is a user value they don't have to buy another computer. They can still can play game and compelling game and good looking games and I can spend numbers, but at some point in the beginning of the year, at the end of last year, we went free on the Epic Game Store for 1 week, and the numbers are crazy. I can't tell you, but the numbers are crazy and and I mean, really crazy. I mean, it's tremendous number of people that have downloaded the game at all, activated the game on their account, because it's not an actual download, but yeah, and knowing that so many people will potentially play our game, and that the game has resonated with so many people at some point, it's humbling and I think we are all proud of our game. We can be, and optimization wise, I think we've done what we could.
Yeah, congrats on that. I think chat as well was mentioning, a lot of people mentioned that they actually got it. They had the game on Steam, they had bought it for their mobile, but they also got it when it was on Epic. So you have people here who are supporting you on multiple platforms there. So thanks everyone in chat for doing that. Thank you so much. That was a really great stream. It was you were very thorough. We got a lot of great content and lots of pro tips, both from Mike and the Alt-Shift team. So I really appreciate it. Mike, I hope you come back onto our stream. This was really great to have you back here.
Great. It's fun. I like it.
Yeah. So like I said, this was the beginning of week 4 of our Creator Spotlight. We have a whole month left of streams for you. A lot of great content. Actually, all week, we're going to be talking about optimization and how to build on multiple platforms. So I'm really curious to see what tomorrow Tomasella will say for the Falconeer, because he's a solo dev working on next-gen consoles. So that is also a huge challenge, and he approaches it probably completely differently. And then on Thursday, we'll talk with the team over that created Greek Memories of Azure. Also a nice, really cool side-scrolling game with a lot of co-op opportunities and things like that. Also using really interesting techniques for making glowing, lighting, beautiful kind of sprites and stuff like that. Thank you so much, Christophe and Matthias, for spending time with us. I hope you had fun.
Yeah,
a lot.
Yeah, awesome. I think we have so many more questions for you. I didn't bombard you with all the questions that chat asked, and we didn't even talk about your other games that you developed that are completely different from this. So I think we'll just have to have you back eventually. Thank you, everyone, and we'll see you tomorrow. Have a good night.
Bye.
Cheers. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.